In the early hours of a frigid January morning in 2019, Graham Whelan, an infamous figure in Ireland's criminal underworld, was rudely awakened from his slumber in a lavish penthouse suite at Dublin's Intercontinental Hotel. Whelan, known by his street moniker, The Wig, had been indulging in a luxurious three-night stay, shelling out over €2,100 for the privilege of occupying room 342, complete with its own outdoor living space. Unbeknownst to Whelan, his opulent respite was about to come to an abrupt end. Law enforcement officers burst into his suite, catching him off guard amidst a collection of illegal substances, cocaine and cannabis, along with some high-value items. A €28,000 Audemars Piguet Royal Oak timepiece and €1,275 in cash. When confronted by the authorities, Whelan's response was as brazen as it was crude. He quipped that the money had been retrieved from an intimate bodily location, colloquially referred to as his Swiss roll, and told the officers they were welcome to keep it. In a display of bravado, he went on to proclaim his dangerous criminal status, even pointing out one of the officers present, claiming, "Ask that fella there, he locked me up," a clear reference to a previous encounter with law enforcement. Whelan's notoriety in Ireland's criminal landscape stretches back many years. He's long been associated with the Byrne organised crime syndicate and is considered a high-ranking member of the infamous Kinahan Cartel. His close ties to other notorious figures such as Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, Fat Freddie Thompson, and the late David Byrne have cemented his position as a major player in Ireland's underworld. Despite his criminal past, Whelan now asserts that he's turned over a new leaf, adding an intriguing twist to his story. He seems to be in a relationship with the sister of renowned MMA fighter, Conor McGregor. Originating from Clonard Road in Crumlin, Whelan earned his peculiar nickname, The Wig, due to a distinctive haircut he sported in his teenage years. For over 2 decades, he's been a central figure in organised crime. However, recent years have brought significant personal tragedies. In 2020, Whelan's wife passed away, leaving him to care for their 4 young children. The following year, he suffered another blow when his close associate and fellow Kinahan Cartel member, Philip Griffiths, took his own life. Whelan's criminal career began in earnest back in March 2000. At the tender age of 17, he was caught up in a major drug bust at a Dublin hotel. Law enforcement uncovered a substantial drug operation, seizing €1.6 million worth of ecstasy and cocaine. Whelan, along with Griffiths and another young man named Declan Gavin, were arrested in the midst of processing the drugs. During his arrest, the young Whelan displayed a cocky attitude, boasting to the guards that he could easily handle a decade-long prison sentence. In the aftermath of the bust, only Gavin was released without charges, sparking suspicions within their criminal circle about his loyalty and potential cooperation with authorities. This incident marked the beginning of the infamous Crumlin-Drimnagh feud, which split the gang into 2 rival factions, one led by Fat Freddie Thompson and the other by Brian Rattigan. Tragically, Gavin, who was closely associated with Thompson, was fatally stabbed just days before his trial, related to the hotel bust, was set to begin. Despite their youth, both Griffiths and Whelan received substantial prison sentences. Whelan, who remained loyal to Thompson's faction, was handed a 6-year term. Upon their release in the mid-2000s, both men continued their involvement in organised crime. Whelan fostered close relationships with David Byrne and Freddie Thompson, who had by then become major figures in Ireland's criminal landscape. In 2007, Whelan and Byrne found themselves in police custody in connection with the 2006 murder of hitman Gary Bryan, a killing linked to the ongoing feud. Bryan had been involved in the shooting of Paul Warren in 2004, which was attributed to the Rattigan faction. In retaliation, Bryan was gunned down by Thompson's group. Whelan had been observed driving past the house of Bryan's mother-in-law shortly before the shooting occurred. Bryan had intended to leave the area, but was fatally shot before he could make his escape. Investigators uncovered a connection between a mobile phone registered to a relative of Byrne and Whelan, showing frequent communication between the two on the day of Brian's murder. While in custody, Byrne attempted to pass newspapers to Whelan through the guards. Upon inspection, authorities discovered a note from Byrne warning, "Loose lips sink ships." Despite their arrest, both men were eventually released without charges. Byrne would later meet a violent end during the notorious Regency Hotel attack in 2016. As the years passed, Whelan continued to climb the ranks of the criminal underworld. He played a significant role in managing the cartel's drug distribution network in South Dublin and collaborated with criminal groups across Ireland, including gangs in Limerick. His rising prominence made him a target for law enforcement under anti-gang legislation, introduced over a decade ago. Authorities compiled a comprehensive file on Whelan, intending to present it to the Director of Public Prosecutions in hopes of bringing charges against him under the new legislation. This action was prompted by the arrest of one of Whelan's associates, who was caught carrying cash in 2009. A subsequent raid uncovered a list detailing names and amounts paid, with numerous references to Whelan's alias, the Whig. However, the DPP ultimately decided not to press charges. Feeling the heat from law enforcement, Whelan relocated to the UK in 2011. There, he aligned himself with Thomas "Bomber" Kavanagh, a senior figure in the Kinahan Cartel and brother-in-law to David and Liam Byrne. Kavanagh had left Ireland years earlier and had risen to become the head of the Kinahan Cartel's UK operations. Following his move to the UK, Whelan took charge of significant drug operations spanning Europe, Ireland, and Britain. He frequently traveled to Spain and the Netherlands during this period. In 2016, Whelan was involved in a violent altercation in Spain, resulting in a conviction for grievous bodily harm. He received a 2-year suspended sentence for this offence. Despite his relocation, Whelan made regular trips back to Ireland in the years leading up to his most recent incarceration. He was suspected of overseeing the cartel's drug operations in the country during these visits. In November 2021, Whelan was sentenced to prison for the Intercontinental Hotel room incident. He received a 3-year sentence, with the final 18 months suspended for money laundering offences, including possession of the €28,000 watch. In the wake of Whelan's 2019 hotel arrest, law enforcement agencies conducted a major operation targeting nearly 20 homes and businesses linked to him. During these searches, documents were discovered suggesting Whelan owned property in the UK, with records indicating ongoing mortgage payments being transferred to a vulture fund. This investigation resulted in the state seizing €75,000 from Whelan, which was deemed to be proceeds of criminal activities. It was later revealed that at the time of his arrest, Whelan had been in possession of a drug-related debt list and an EncroChat phone. This discovery occurred 18 months before Dutch and French authorities successfully hacked the EncroChat network, leading to widespread arrests across Europe. In July 2021, Whelan entered a guilty plea to charges of participating in the operations of an organised crime gang through money laundering activities. He also admitted to possessing over €1,200 in cash and the Audemars Piguet watch, both of which were obtained through criminal means. Furthermore, Whelan confessed to spending €2,140 on the luxurious 3-night hotel stay, knowing or believing that the funds used were proceeds of criminal activities. During his time behind bars, Whelan received several visits from Aoife McGregor, sister of the famous MMA fighter Conor McGregor. The two had developed a close friendship following the breakdown of F's marriage. Whelan was released from Mountjoy Prison in December 2022, and the pair continued to see each other after his release. Whelan's connection to the McGregor family extends beyond his relationship with Aoife McGregor. He had previously been photographed with Conor McGregor on multiple occasions and was even seen playing for McGregor's football team, the Black Forge, in October 2021. As Whelan now faces an uncertain future, questions arise about whether he will make good on his claims of reformation or if he will revert to his criminal past. His story serves as a stark reminder of the complex and often violent world of organized crime in Ireland, and the far-reaching consequences it has on individuals, families, and society at large. Whelan's journey from a teenage drug dealer to a high-ranking member of one of Ireland's most notorious criminal organizations illustrates the insidious nature of organized crime. It shows how early involvement in criminal activities can lead to a lifetime entrenched in the underworld, with severe personal and societal costs. The repeated interventions by law enforcement, while sometimes successful in securing convictions, seem to have had limited impact on Whelan's overall trajectory within the criminal world. This raises questions about the effectiveness of current strategies in combating organized crime, and the challenges faced by authorities in dismantling these powerful criminal networks. Whelan's story also highlights the personal toll of a life in crime. The loss of his wife and the suicide of his close associate Griffiths underscore the human cost of involvement in criminal activities. These personal tragedies, coupled with his responsibilities as a single father to 4 young children, may have contributed to his claimed desire for change. The intersection of Whelan's criminal world with the celebrity sphere, as evidenced by his connection to the McGregor family, adds another layer of complexity to his story. It demonstrates how the boundaries between the underworld and mainstream society can sometimes blur, creating unexpected and potentially problematic associations. As Whelan navigates his post-prison life, his story serves as a cautionary tale about the long-term consequences of criminal involvement and the challenges of breaking free from a deeply entrenched criminal lifestyle. On a busy Saturday afternoon in September 2014, the normally tranquil atmosphere of Harmon's Irish Bar, located in the upscale resort of Alvia near Marbella, was shattered. The sun-drenched terrace was packed with holidaymakers and locals alike, enjoying the warm Mediterranean weather. But in a matter of seconds, all of that would change. Chaos erupted in a scene that would forever be remembered in Spain's criminal history. 2 gunmen stormed the bar, methodically targeting one individual in particular. The man, Gerard Hatchet Kavanagh, a 44-year-old Irish boxer turned drug dealer, was seated at a corner table, wearing casual green swim shorts and chatting with a woman, blissfully unaware of the brutal fate awaiting him. Without warning, the gunman opened fire. 3 shots struck his arm, followed by another 3 into his back. As Kavanagh desperately attempted to retreat into the safety of the bar, he collapsed at the doorway, helpless. The assassins then executed him with 2 final shots to the head. One stray bullet even pierced a nearby parked car. Witnesses later described the assailants as eerily calm, operating with the precision and skill of seasoned professionals, almost like ninjas. One of them was cloaked entirely in black, moving swiftly and deliberately. After the execution, the pair fled the scene in a BMW, which was found burnt out a few kilometers away, just down the road near a supermarket, a trail of destruction and death left in their wake. The man gunned down in broad daylight, as it turned out, was none other than Gerard Hatchet Kavanagh. Once a promising boxer, Kavanagh had fallen from grace, his life spiraling into the dangerous world of organized crime. Born and raised in Ireland, Kavanagh had once been a contender in the Irish boxing scene, but the allure of wealth and power led him down a darker path. He moved to Spain nearly a decade before his death, where he quickly embedded himself in the murky world of drug dealing. His ties to the infamous Kinahan Cartel, one of Europe's most ruthless criminal organizations, were well known. This connection would ultimately seal his fate. Kavanagh's fall from the ring to the criminal underworld was swift. No longer a fighter in the traditional sense, he became a key enforcer for the Kinahan Cartel. His role was clear: collecting debts, dealing with rivals, and ensuring that the cartel's business ran smoothly across Europe. Kavanagh was not just another low-level thug. He had earned his place at the table in the violent world of drug trafficking, money laundering, and organized crime. Kavanagh's association with the Kinahan Cartel was no accident. The Kinahan family, originally from Ireland, had become one of the most powerful crime syndicates in Europe. Operating out of Dublin, they controlled vast networks of drug trafficking, money laundering, and arms dealing. Their reach extended into Spain, the UK, and beyond, as they capitalized on the booming drug market. Gerard Kavanagh, with his violent reputation and connections in Spain, was a perfect ally for the Kinahans. He was part of a well-oiled machine that moved illegal substances across borders, evading law enforcement at every turn. In fact, Kavanagh had been dispatched to Dublin just months before his execution to collect a massive drug debt, €1 million, on behalf of the cartel. The debt was owed by a group of low-level dealers who had failed to deliver. When Kavanagh didn't return with the money, the Kinahan Cartel wasted no time in sending a message. Failure had consequences. Kavanagh had failed them, and the price for that failure would be death. He became a target within his own organization. Kavanagh's violent end would not be the last tragedy to strike his family. Just 2 years later, his son, Jamie Kavanagh, narrowly escaped death in an attack that would become infamous across Ireland and the UK. Jamie, a promising boxer in his own right, was attending a fight at the Regency Hotel in Dublin. What was meant to be a celebratory evening for Irish boxing quickly descended into chaos when gunmen stormed the venue, opening fire indiscriminately. Amidst the gunfire, gangster Trevor Byrne was killed. Jamie Kavanagh, though shaken, survived the attack, but it served as a stark reminder of the deep entanglement of his family in organized crime. In the aftermath, the world began to piece together the connections between the Kavanagh family, the Kinahan Cartel, and the ongoing gangland violence in Ireland. The Regency Hotel shooting, which became a symbol of the escalating feud between the Kinahan Cartel and rival gangs, was seen as a warning shot. No one was safe, not even the family members of prominent criminals. Gerard Kavanagh wasn't the only one involved in this international web of crime. His cousin, James Mulvey, was equally entrenched in the world of drugs and money laundering. Mulvey, originally from the UK, was known for his charm, his intellect, and his ability to run a smooth operation. While Kavanagh was the enforcer, Mulvey was the strategist, the mastermind behind much of their criminal empire. Together, they built a network that spanned the globe, with drug shipments moving from South America to Europe and money flowing into secretive offshore accounts. Mulvey's rise to prominence within the criminal world began in the early 2000s. He was known for his sharp business acumen, which he used to establish smuggling routes and laundering operations. He even started running drugs through France, where his operations began to draw the attention of law enforcement. But it was in 2008 when French police intercepted a large drug shipment involving both Mulvey and Kavanagh that their operation began to unravel. Despite the setback, Mulvey continued to expand his empire, operating from luxury hotels and exclusive locations across Europe. The duo was responsible for shipping massive quantities of cocaine and cannabis across borders, using sophisticated methods to evade detection. Mulvey's network was vast, and his ability to move drugs without attracting attention made him one of the most dangerous figures in the international drug trade. While Kavanagh and Mulvey operated in the shadows, their wealth and lifestyle reflected their success. Mulvey, in particular, was known for his extravagant taste. He lived in a villa in Spain worth €1.5 million, complete with an indoor pool, cinema, and multiple luxury cars. His connections extended to the highest echelons of European society, with Mulvey frequently seen at exclusive events, rubbing shoulders with the rich and powerful. But beneath the surface of this lavish lifestyle lay a network of crime, deception, and danger. Mulvey was not only involved in drug smuggling, but also in money laundering. He used legitimate businesses, such as nightclubs in Birmingham, to funnel illicit profits. His wealth, however, was built on the blood of countless victims. The cocaine shipments, the money that flowed through banks, and the violence that accompanied it all were the true cost of his empire. As Mulvey's empire expanded, so too did the attention of law enforcement. In 2013, the National Crime Agency began a covert investigation into his activities. They traced millions of euros being funneled through offshore accounts in places like the Isle of Man and Monaco. Meanwhile, French, Spanish, and Belgian authorities were working together, pooling their resources to track Mulvey's movements across Europe. The investigation uncovered a complex network of smuggling operations. Drugs were hidden inside industrial machinery, shipped across borders in containers marked as legitimate goods. But the authorities were closing in. Belgian warehouse workers tipped off the police about suspicious activity, and suddenly, Mulvey's carefully constructed empire was at risk of being exposed. With each passing day, the noose tightened. Mulvey's downfall came in 2017, when he was arrested in a dramatic raid by Lithuanian special forces. He had been on the run for years, constantly shifting locations, but his arrest marked the beginning of the end for the Kinahan Cartel's European operations. The NCA and other European agencies had pieced together the full extent of Mulvey's empire, uncovering millions of euros in illegal transactions. Mulvey's capture was the culmination of years of undercover work and international cooperation. It sent a shockwave through the world of organized crime, signaling that even the most powerful criminals could be brought down. The Kinahan Cartel, once the undisputed kingpins of European drug trafficking, found themselves under intense scrutiny, with many of their key operatives either arrested or in hiding. In 2018, after a lengthy trial, Mulvey was sentenced to 32 years in prison for his role in orchestrating the import of drugs worth over 80 million euros into the UK. But while Mulvey's capture was a significant victory for law enforcement, it didn't signal the end of the Kinahan Cartel. The organization continued to operate, but their grip on Europe had weakened. Mulvey's arrest marked the beginning of a crackdown on the cartel's operations. Despite the sentence, Mulvey's legacy looms large. His influence on the global drug trade, his connections to the Kinahan Cartel, and the vast network of criminals he left behind continue to echo through the world of organized crime. And while law enforcement continues to close in, the story of Gerard Kavanagh and James Mulvey is a reminder of the dangerous and volatile world of international drug trafficking. The brutal execution of Gerard Kavanagh, the rise and fall of James Mulvey, and the unraveling of the Kinahan Cartel represent just one chapter in the ongoing battle between law enforcement and organized crime. It's a world where power, betrayal, and violence are everyday realities.
Now, the shooting of Jason Molyneux in Dublin's inner city last night has been described as a callous murder, with Gardaí saying he was lured to his death. The 27-year-old from North William Street was shot 6 times in the chest and stomach after he went to meet someone at James Larkin House Flats complex.
I was very, very shocked. I don't know when it's going to end.
Superintendent Jerry Murphy of Store Street Garda Station addressed the media at the back of the flats this afternoon, and he described the killing of 27-year-old Jason Molyneux as a callous murder. The father of one from nearby North William Street was shot 6 times at around 9:45 last night, just before Gardaí came on the scene. He outlined how witnesses said the suspected gunman was dressed in dark clothing and escaped on foot. He sought information too on a white Renault Kangoo van with a 10D registration found burnt out near the East Link Bridge this morning.
This is a callous murder. This is a murder that has occurred in an area that has been the subject of a number of murders in the past. We need the help of the community to assist us. We are out there on an ongoing basis, but we need the help of the community, and in particular I'm appealing to the community to come forward and help us with this investigation.
On a Friday night in 2008, Anthony Russell, a well-known criminal from North Dublin, was out socializing with friends at the Ardley Inn when 2 men entered the pub causing chaos. One of the men opened fire, specifically targeting Russell, striking him multiple times in the chest. The assailant quickly fled the scene in a silver Nissan Almera, which was later found abandoned in a nearby laneway. Inside the vehicle, a handgun was discovered. Russell was swiftly rushed to the nearby Beaumont Hospital for treatment, but tragically succumbed to his injuries within an hour and a half of the attack. He was a father of 2 and had plans to marry the following month. This was not his first brush with danger, as he had survived a similar gun attack at his home 2 years prior. Russell was associated with a gang led by Christy Griffin, who had recently been sentenced to life in prison for a heinous crime. The gang, notorious for their involvement in criminal activities such as drug trafficking, robberies, and cooperating with the Provisional IRA, was thrown into turmoil after Griffin's arrest. The revelation of Griffin's crime sparked infighting within the group, leading to a violent feud among criminals from the Sheriff Street area. This feud quickly spiraled out of control, resulting in a series of violent incidents including murders and grenade attacks, causing chaos and devastation in the usually quiet neighborhood. Following Russell's death, the Garda conducted several searches and arrested more than a dozen individuals. Surprisingly, one of those questioned about a murder was a teenager. This was 17-year-old Jason Buda Molyneux, who had quickly become known to the Garda for his involvement in serious organized crime. Buda began his criminal activities at the age of 13, initially engaging in petty offenses. By 17, he was a hired gun, believed to be part of the team responsible for the 2008 killing of Anthony Russell. This was not the first time he was suspected of involvement in a murder. 2 years earlier, at just 15, he was implicated in a plot to kill a rival. During that incident, Buda, wearing a bulletproof vest, jumped out of a car and entered the St. Mary's Mansion's flats complex. Garda suspected he was sent to search for targets amid the ongoing feud in the north of the city. However, the 15-year-old, who was also a notorious joyrider, was caught off guard when he encountered 2 police officers and was eventually arrested for driving a stolen motorbike. Buda quickly became notorious as one of Dublin's most dangerous criminals due to his obsession with weapons. He had an astonishing 120 criminal convictions, including drug possession, knife offenses, and theft-related charges, which earned him a reputation for extreme violence. While he was never formally charged with Russell's murder, he was a prime suspect in 4 other gangland killings in Dublin, such as the assassination of Mad Mickey Devoy in January 2014, the execution-style murder of Michael Keogh in 2017, and the tragic double murder of Devoy's sister and a friend that same year. Buda had close ties with the Hutch family, especially with Derek Coakley Hutch, who was the nephew of the monk. In 2016, Buda was caught with a stolen motorbike believed to be intended for a gangland hit against the Kinahan mob, with whom the Hutch family was feuding. 2 years later, Derek became the 14th victim of the ongoing feud between the Kinahan and Hutch families on January 20th, 2018. Derek, a 27-year-old father of 2, was ambushed and shot multiple times at close range as he arrived at the Bridgeview halting site. Despite the efforts of emergency services, Derek was pronounced dead at the scene. His funeral was set to take place the following week, with the wake held near Buda's residence on Buckingham Street Upper. Naturally, Buda attended the wake, intending to carry the coffin of his slain friend during the funeral. Little did he realize he would be next in line. After attending the wake, Buda returned home, where he lived with his mother and sister. However, around 8:45 p.m., Buda left, saying he was meeting a friend at nearby James Larkin House. Moments later, a Renault Kangoo van approached, carrying a 2-man hit team. Buda was shot up to 13 times at close range, just a short distance from his house. Despite being officially warned by the Garda, Buda was not wearing his bulletproof vest at the time of the attack. His mother disclosed that he had refrained from going out earlier in the day, due to concerns about people watching their home and keeping track of his movements. Miss Molyneux got worried when attempts to reach her son went unanswered. She left the house to look for him, and as she prepared to leave, she heard a loud bang. Hastening to put on her boots, she moved out to the balcony and saw about 4 flashes coming from the James Larkin flats. In a moment of defiance, she shouted at the suspected gunmen, labeling them as dirty scumbags before rushing to her injured son's side. Upon reaching Buda, she asked him who had shot him, but he remained silent. He was rushed to Mater Hospital, where he was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. The Sphinx handgun used to end Buda's life, a rare firearm in Ireland, was discovered in the burnt-out car after the gruesome act. Despite the heavy presence of Garda leading up to Derek Hutch's funeral, Buda was ruthlessly shot, showcasing the determination of his assailants. Buda's ties to the Hutch family, especially after Derek's death, made him a target in the ongoing Kinahan-Hutch feud. Even while on bail, Buda convened a meeting with his fellow Hutch gang members, highlighting his prominent role in the criminal organization. Authorities suspect that a previous feud unrelated to the current conflict between the Kinahans and the Hutch family may have ultimately led to Buda's tragic demise. Speculation arose that he had been targeted for death following his release from prison, as rival gangs were supposedly seeking vengeance. Authorities had warned Buda multiple times about the immediate danger to his life, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. The prevailing theory regarding the reason for Buda's killing suggests a possible connection to his associations with individuals linked to an attempted assassination of criminal Derek Bottler Devoy. Sadly, instead of Devoy, his blameless sister Antoinette Corbally Devoy and her friend Clinton Shannon, who were also innocent, were fatally shot when two gunmen invaded the home of the mother of six in Ballymun in August 2017, prior to the recent double murder. There was speculation that Buda may have been responsible for the fatal shooting of Bottler's brother, Michael Mad Mickey Devoy, 3 years ago. Michael was tragically killed shortly after serving a brief stint in prison. It is suggested that Buda's murder may have been a form of retaliation for Michael's death. Michael was suspected of shooting at a group of individuals leaving a party at a Dublin pub back in 2013. Although no one was killed in that incident, Kinahan drug dealer Greg Lynch sustained a serious head injury, and 3 innocent bystanders were also hurt. Initially, Lynch accused Bottler Devoy of orchestrating the attack. While the case of Michael Devoy's murder remains unsolved, police believe that individuals associated with the Kinahan-Hutch dispute may have been behind the act, seeking revenge for the harm done to one of their own. Despite suspicions of involvement in Michael's murder and being questioned by the Garda, Buda was ultimately released without any charges being brought against him. However, despite this, Buda continued to be blamed by associates of the Devoy's Ballymun group for the killing, prompting the Garda to consider the possibility of Buda being targeted by this faction. After a thorough investigation, the Garda concluded that Buda was indeed a victim of a planned attack involving multiple individuals working in conjunction with the gunman. Numerous arrests were made in connection to the case, but as of now, no one has been prosecuted for their involvement in Buda's death. For a considerable period, the flamboyant Johnny Morrissey had been indulging in the Costa del Crime, showcasing opulence in his lavish mansion that bore resemblance to the grandeur of the Roman Emperor Nero. Morrissey, basking in a sense of invincibility, found himself in a precarious situation when exposed as a pivotal figure within the Kinahan Cartel. The U.S. authorities had officially sanctioned him for his involvement in money laundering activities. Forced to escape, the vodka tycoon's once charmed life took a dramatic turn. In September 2022, the final act unfolded for Morrissey, a seasoned player in the shadowy realms of the underworld. Delving into the life and illicit activities of the Kinahan crime cartel's enforcer and primary financial figure, known to his Irish neighbors as Johnny Cash, reveals a tale marked by meticulous police planning. In a well-executed operation, Johnny Morrissey, suspected of serving as the chief money launderer for the Kinahan crime syndicate, was successfully apprehended at his hideaway in Malaga in September 2022. The operation involved a collaborative effort by Spanish police, supported by the Irish Guards, Britain's National Crime Agency, and the United States Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA. Converging on Morrissey's villa, the law enforcement team surrounded him at gunpoint, leading to a decisive arrest. Johnny Morrissey had garnered notoriety as a pivotal member of the Kinahan Cartel, and his apprehension followed sanctions imposed by the U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control. This significant development also implicated other individuals, including Christopher Kinahan Sr., along with his sons Daniel and Christopher Jr. In April 2022, Johnny Morrissey found himself among the 7 individuals sanctioned by the U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control. According to U.S. authorities, Christy Kinahan and his sons spearheaded a criminal network with a staggering value surpassing €1 billion. To intensify the pursuit of justice, U.S. officials announced a substantial €5 million reward for information that could lead to the apprehension of the top 3 figures in the Kinahan organization. This move further constricted the net around Ireland's most infamous criminal syndicate. Law enforcement authorities assert that Morrissey, a long-standing associate of the Kinahans, served as an enforcer and played a pivotal role in facilitating international drug shipments from South America. However, his involvement went beyond muscle and logistics. It is alleged that Morrissey laundered a substantial sum, exceeding €200 million in the 18 months leading up to his arrest, earning him the title of the cartel's principal financial figure in Spain. What led Morrissey to become one of the most prominent money launderers in the underworld is a tale rooted in his unconventional journey. Growing up in the Rochdale area of Manchester, he departed school at the age of 15. In the mid-1990s, Morrissey made a significant move to Ireland, choosing the picturesque town of Kinsella as his new base. Here he embarked on the transformation of a two-story building near the waterfront, turning it into a high-end restaurant. The establishment, named Annalise, made waves in the community as everything, including the hefty €600,000 restoration costs, seemed to be paid for in cash. Despite the commotion, Kinsella locals regarded Morrissey as a charming and sociable man. He frequented the town's bars and gained a positive reputation for regularly contributing to charitable causes. Little did the community know that Morrissey had a darker side, holding a notorious reputation as a hitman in the underworld. Indeed, one of the reasons for his relocation to Ireland was his standing as a hitman for gangsters in England. This reputation, coupled with Morrissey's extravagant lifestyle, attracted the attention of the IRA. Ultimately, Morrissey found himself paying substantial sums, totaling tens of thousands of pounds, to the Provisional IRA for protection, a hidden layer to the seemingly charming facade he presented to the world. The narrative surrounding Morrissey takes a darker turn as it's suggested that a senior IRA figure, connected to the tragic Birmingham pub bombings of 1974 that claimed 21 lives, was the individual tasked with collecting funds from the suspected money launderer linked to the cartel. This period saw Ireland emerge as an attractive haven for criminals who viewed the country as a favorable location for illicit activities. Its proximity to England and the absence of language barriers provided a setting where nefarious individuals could lead relatively undisturbed lives, shielded from extensive scrutiny by authorities. During this phase, Morrissey allegedly engaged in purchasing cocaine from Russian gangs and orchestrating shipments to be dropped off along the Irish coast for distribution in both the UK and Ireland. However, a pivotal moment in Ireland's fight against organized crime came with the establishment of the Criminal Assets Bureau in 1996. This marked a significant blow to the Irish underworld, and Morrissey, an Englishman with a notorious background, found himself among their first targets. Upon investigating Morrissey's background through Interpol, CAB was astonished to uncover the presence of such a dangerous criminal within their midst. This revelation prompted a series of raids on properties linked to Morrissey in County Cork. In these searches, law enforcement uncovered a handgun, half a kilo of cocaine, and a stash of cash. Additionally, they discovered Cartier jewelry, presumably used by Morrissey for payments to Russian suppliers, shedding light on the intricate web of criminal activities he was entangled in. Following the raids, Morrissey embarked on a journey to Russia. However, his venture took a dark turn when he failed to settle his outstanding debt, resulting in gangsters breaking his arms and legs. Until that point, the criminal gang had operated openly, acquiring businesses and homes, and maintaining bank accounts in their own names, rendering them vulnerable targets for agents of the Criminal Assets Bureau, who were eager to wield their newfound powers. By December 1997, the pressure intensified on Morrissey. He received a substantial tax demand exceeding €100,000, leading to the search of his property and the freezing of significant assets, including cars and jewelry valued at hundreds of thousands of euros. It soon became apparent that Morrissey was orchestrating an assassination plot against the cab officer who had signed the tax demand. Irish law enforcement, however, thwarted the murder attempt, unraveling Morrissey's true identity. Exposed and facing imminent consequences, Morrissey was compelled to flee to Spain in the early 2000s. This turn of events marked a significant chapter in his criminal endeavors and highlighted the relentless pursuit of justice by authorities determined to dismantle the intricate web of illicit activities he was involved in. In 2008, as part of the collaborative investigation known as Operation Shovel, authorities from Spain, the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Belgium joined forces to target the Kinahan Cartel. This heightened scrutiny prompted Johnny Morrissey to shift gears and seek a more legitimate source of income. Exploring new avenues, he considered starting an internet business in Panama. The plan involved creating a website named theratbook.com, intended to allow subscribers to check if individuals with criminal convictions resided in their neighborhoods. While specific details remain unclear, leaked emails from Mossack Fonseca, the law firm central to the Panama Papers scandal, exposed discussions about aiding Morrissey in setting up bank accounts to process subscription payments for the internet site through a shell company. However, a stumbling block emerged as the requirement to maintain a physical office in Panama posed profitability challenges for Morrissey, given the nature of the proposed ghost office. Over time, Morrissey became closely associated with Daniel Kinahan and rose within the Kinahan Cartel's ranks. He forged connections with Dublin gangster David Douglas, whose demise in 2016 was allegedly orchestrated on the orders of Fat Freddie Thompson. Morrissey was frequently seen in the company of armed robber Kevin Lynch. Additionally, he has been identified as an associate of Irish criminal George the Penguin Mitchell, now recognized as part of the 5 major suspects implicated in the Exclu network, a criminal operation that was dismantled after being covertly hacked by Dutch police. These intricate connections shed light on Morrissey's evolving role within the Kinahan Cartel and his expanding network within the criminal underworld. Law enforcement authorities believe that the Exclu network, a criminal operation taken down by Dutch police, was utilized by gangs engaged in high-level organized crime, primarily centered in the Netherlands, but extending its reach into Sweden, France, Germany, and Italy. Despite being a prime suspect in several unsolved murders in the UK, Johnny Morrissey skillfully managed to elude significant criminal convictions. He evolved into a trusted lieutenant, playing a pivotal role in concealing illicit funds within the criminal network. Morrissey established a sophisticated network of companies, Nero Drinks among them, which was brought to public attention in April 2022, when the U.S. Treasury revealed its connection to the Kinahan laundering network. Nero Drinks, marketed as a premium vodka brand, had gained popularity in elite venues in Spain. Leveraging their connections with celebrities and affluent socialites, Morrissey and his wife Nicola projected an image of successful business owners. However, beneath this facade, they led a double life as major money launderers. Reports indicated that the Kinahan Cartel was infuriated with Morrissey for deviating from explicit instructions on how to launder their drug money. The cartel's typical modus operandi involved using legitimate businesses such as shops, bars, nightclubs, and property firms. Morrissey's divergence from these established protocols created tension within the criminal organization, emphasizing the complexities and internal conflicts within the underworld that Morrissey navigated while evading law enforcement scrutiny. According to sources from Spanish intelligence, mob boss Daniel Kinahan holds Johnny Morrissey responsible for attracting law enforcement's attention by engaging in money laundering for the cartel during his tenure as the head of the prominent Nero Vodka Company. Suspicions surrounding Morrissey and his wife Nicola surfaced in 2021 when Spanish authorities took note of their lavish expenditures on the Costa del Sol, despite Nero Vodka displaying a lack of profitability. The investigation gained momentum following the seizure of 200 kilograms of cocaine and nearly €500,000 in cash concealed in vehicles. Law enforcement executed searches at residential and business locations in Spain and the UK, including places in Glasgow and Hayward Rochdale associated with Nero Drinks. Detectives uncovered that the laundered funds had not been physically moved out of Spain, but were dispersed globally using the underground money transfer system known as Hawala. Spanish police believed that Morrissey was well aware that his days of freedom were numbered after being exposed as a key member of the cartel. His decision to hold his annual birthday celebration in August, as opposed to December, was interpreted as a signal that he anticipated an imminent arrest. This revelation sheds light on the intricate web of activities Morrissey was involved in and the tightening grip of law enforcement on his illicit endeavors. Johnny Morrissey now confronts the grim reality of spending the remainder of his life behind bars. Presently confined in the high-security Alhauran de la Torre prison, he awaits trial. Moreover, he faces the looming possibility of extradition to the U.S., where stringent penalties for money laundering could significantly escalate the severity of his legal problems. The criminal underworld anxiously awaits to discern whether Morrissey will maintain silence or divulge information. As the legal proceedings unfold, his choices could have far-reaching implications for others entangled in illicit activities.
On a seemingly ordinary May morning in 2016 at the early hour of 7 a.m., Mary MacDonald's life was about to be irrevocably altered. Living in the Avondale House flats in Dublin, she had grown accustomed to the quiet hum of mornings in the complex. The soft morning air was usually filled with peace as the world around her slowly came to life. But on that fateful morning, a sharp, urgent knock at her door shattered the tranquility. Before Mary could even react, the door was thrown open, and 2 men stormed into her apartment, their guns drawn. The men were unmoved by Mary's frantic protests as they took control of her flat. They quickly positioned themselves at the windows, eyes fixed on another apartment. What Mary didn't know at that moment was that they were closely monitoring one of her neighbors, tracking his every move. As soon as the man left his flat, the 2 men sprang into action. Rushing down the stairwell of the building, they were nearly on top of the unsuspecting neighbor as he strolled toward his car in the complex's car park. the man seemed oblivious to the danger behind him. He casually removed his jacket and placed it inside his vehicle, unaware of the two shadows closing in. Just as he was about to take a seat behind the wheel, one of the attackers fired. 4 deafening shots rang out, slicing through the early morning stillness. The victim staggered from the gunfire, with 2 shots hitting him in the neck, one in the lower back, and the final shot in his chest. Blood pooled around him as he crumpled to the ground. Meanwhile, the second gunman attempted to fire, but his weapon jammed. Frustration and panic set in as he struggled with the gun, unable to complete the task. The job was, for all intents and purposes, done. The 2 assailants fled, leaving the lifeless body of the victim behind. Their escape, however, was not without complications. They hurriedly jumped into a waiting black BMW, only to find the vehicle refused to start. Scrambling in a panic, they abandoned the BMW and sprinted to a nearby Skoda Octavia. This time, the engine roared to life, and they quickly sped off, disappearing into the distance. When authorities arrived at the scene, the BMW provided chilling clues. Inside, officers found a jerry can of petrol, likely intended to destroy evidence, along with 2 changes of clothes. It was clear that this murder had been meticulously planned, with every detail carefully considered. Just days before his execution, the victim, 35-year-old Gareth Hutch, had been informed by the Irish police of a threat to his life. What many didn't know at the time was that Gareth was no ordinary man. He was the nephew of Jerry the Monk Hutch, one of Ireland's most infamous criminal figures, and this murder was just one piece of a much larger and deadlier puzzle. The killing was part of an ongoing and vicious feud between 2 rival criminal families, the Hutch family and the Kinahan Cartel. This feud had already seen several bloodshed-filled chapters, including the infamous Regency Hotel shooting 3 months earlier. That attack, which took the life of David Byrne, a key figure within the Kinahan Cartel, had sent shockwaves through Dublin, and it ignited a full-fledged war between the 2 factions. Gareth's murder marked the 8th death in this brutal conflict, a testament to the scale of the violence that was consuming the city. Before his death, Gareth had confided in a local councillor about his growing fear of being murdered. He was particularly afraid of being killed in front of his young son. At the time, Gareth had been desperately searching for a safer apartment to move to, one that would shield him from the escalating threats. However, time was running out. The tension in the Avondale House flats was palpable the day before Gareth's murder. Mary MacDonald, whose apartment would soon become an unwitting vantage point for the killers, witnessed a heated confrontation in the complex's car park. Jonathon Keogh, a well-known gunman she had known for years, squared off with Gareth Hutch. The words exchanged were chilling, and Mary would never forget them. Jonathon warned Gareth that if anything happened to his sister Regina or his family, he would personally come after Gareth. That night, Jonathon Keogh came to Mary's apartment with an offer. He wanted to use her flat for a few hours in exchange for €5,000. Mary, feeling uneasy, declined the offer. But Regina, Jonathon's sister, was persistent, insisting that Mary comply. Their refusal to accept Mary's refusal left her feeling cornered and trapped in a situation she couldn't escape. Later that evening, around 10:45 p.m., Jonathon Keogh and another man followed Mary into her apartment. Once inside, the 2 men drew handguns from their trousers and began to meticulously wipe them down with wet wipes. The sanitized weapons were placed in a bag, and the men departed without further incident. Disturbed by what had just happened, Mary called Regina to express her concerns, stating she didn't want any part in their dangerous plans. Regina dismissed her fears, and minutes later, she arrived at Mary's apartment, leaving behind rubber gloves on the kitchen counter, an ominous gesture that underscored their control over the situation. The next morning, as the sun barely peeked over the horizon, Jonathon Keogh and his accomplice forced their way into Mary's apartment again. This time, They were lying in wait for Gareth to emerge. As he stepped outside, the men rushed into action, confronting him in the parking lot before executing him cold-bloodedly. Less than 12 hours after the murder, a chilling CCTV video began circulating on social media. The footage captured the brutal execution of Gareth Hutch, showing two gunmen stealthily approaching Gareth as he tried to enter his car. Their intentions were unmistakably lethal, and the shots rang out, bringing a tragic and swift end to the life of the Hutch family member. The botched escape attempt of the killers soon became their undoing. After abandoning the black BMW, the men fled in a Skoda, but they left behind a trail of evidence that investigators would later use to identify them. A thorough investigation led to the identification of the primary shooter, 33-year-old Jonathon Keogh, a man already notorious within the criminal world. Jonathon Keogh's criminal history was long and troubling. His reputation for violence and lawlessness had cemented his place as a significant figure within Dublin's underworld. His run-ins with the law began when he was arrested for manufacturing pipe bombs for the Irish National Liberation Army. In the raid, authorities seized steel pipes, batteries, alarm clocks, and other components meant to create bombs of maximum lethality. Keogh's motivations for making the bombs were not ideological. Rather, they were part of a money-making racket targeting drug dealers through kidnapping, extortion, and intimidation. After serving an 8-year prison sentence, Keogh returned to his life of crime, now with even more ambition. He entrenched himself deeper into organized crime, forming alliances with other mobsters from Limerick and Eastern Europe. Keogh's violent path would eventually lead him to become a key player within the Kinahan Cartel's hit squad, targeting the Hutch family as part of their deadly feud. Keogh's criminal endeavors escalated when he became involved in the Kinahan Cartel's war against the Hutch family. After the Regency Hotel shooting in 2016, which had claimed the life of Trevor Byrne, Keogh and his accomplices were tasked with assassinating members of the Hutch family. Jonathon Keogh's close connection with notorious gangland figures, including Thomas McConnell, Gerard Mackin, and others, solidified his role in this violent network. In 2016, Spanish authorities revealed that Keogh was on the Kinahan payroll, orchestrating operations aimed at eliminating Hutch family members. His role in the cartel's hit squad was pivotal, and he had a hand in many of the brutal executions that occurred during this violent feud. Keogh, along with Eamon Cumberton, was responsible for a series of meticulously planned murders that would leave the Hutch family reeling. However, the law would eventually catch up to Keogh. In the aftermath of Gareth Hutch's murder, Keogh fled Ireland, seeking refuge first in Scotland, then in London. His attempt to vanish from the public eye was short-lived, as detectives eventually tracked him to Essex, England, where he had applied for a new passport. Keogh was arrested by the UK's National Crime Agency and extradited back to Ireland. There, he stood trial for the murder of Gareth Hutch, alongside his sister Regina Keogh and accomplice Thomas Fox. All three were found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment in December 2024. The trial revealed the depth of the conspiracy and the chillingly calculated planning that had gone into the murder. The court's findings were damning. Jonathon Keogh, the ringleader, had been involved in almost every aspect of the planning and execution of the murder. His sister Regina had played a key role by securing the use of Mary MacDonald's flat as a vantage point, while Thomas Fox had served as the getaway driver. Since his incarceration, Keogh's behavior has remained volatile. Known for his violent outbursts, he has been a constant source of trouble in prison. He has threatened prison staff, engaged in altercations with other inmates, and been transferred multiple times due to his disruptive behavior. In 2018, after a violent incident in Mountjoy Prison, Keogh was transferred to another facility. Keogh's reign of terror within Ireland's criminal world continued to spiral out of control. But even in the face of justice, he remains defiant. He has repeatedly expressed regret over involving his siblings in the Kinahan-Hutch feud, but his violent history suggests that redemption is unlikely. As twilight enveloped Dubai, the city's skyline shimmered with the last golden rays of the day. Within this vibrant metropolis, Angelo Pandelli's penthouse towered above, a symbol of both luxury and menace. At 53, Pandelli was no ordinary criminal. He was the powerful boss of the Australian Hells Angels. His reputation for ruthlessness and strategic brilliance made him a formidable figure in the world of organised crime. The startling revelation came from Cocaine Inc., an Australian podcast renowned for its in-depth investigations into global criminal networks. Angelo Pandelli had allegedly forged a significant alliance with the Kinahan Cartel, a notorious syndicate known for its extensive operations in the cocaine trade. The Kinahan Cartel, led by the enigmatic Christopher Kinahan Sr. and his sons Daniel and Christy Jr., had evaded law enforcement efforts across Europe and the Middle East. Their operation was infamous for its sophistication and brutality. The partnership between Pandelli and the Kinahans was not merely a local arrangement, but a strategic move aimed at dominating the global cocaine market. According to Cocaine Inc., the duo was orchestrating an elaborate scheme to transport hundreds of kilos of cocaine from Colombia to Europe via Ireland. This route, fraught with logistical challenges and high risks, was chosen for its potential to maximize profits while minimizing detection. The alliance promised to flood international markets with high-quality cocaine, altering the dynamics of the global drug trade. The partnership's ambition was clear: control every stage of the cocaine supply chain, from production in South America to distribution in Europe and Australia. By leveraging Pandelli's extensive network within the Hells Angels and the Kinahans' established international operations, they aim to create an unparalleled distribution empire. The podcast's investigative reporting revealed the vast and complex network that Pandelli and the Kinahans had built. Pandelli's role was crucial. His control over the Australian Hells Angels provided him with a powerful distribution network. In Australia, where cocaine prices soared to around €215 per gram, Pandelli's influence was significant, making him an invaluable partner for the Kinahans. The Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission reported a dramatic increase in cocaine supply, with the annual street value of the global cocaine market reaching an unprecedented €110 billion. The collaboration between Pandelli and the Kinahans was a key factor in this surge. Their operation involved not only sophisticated smuggling routes, but also a network of intermediaries and safe houses designed to evade detection. The podcast detailed how Pandelli and the Kinahans employed a variety of methods to move cocaine across borders. Maritime and air freight were used to bypass traditional customs controls, while a network of clandestine routes and contacts ensured the smooth flow of drugs into high-demand markets. The complexity of their operation was matched only by its scale, highlighting the immense profits and risks involved. To secure their operation, Pandelli and the Kinahans used a series of covert meetings and encrypted communications. They built relationships with corrupt officials and utilized advanced technology to monitor law enforcement activities. Their ability to adapt and innovate was a testament to their commitment to maintaining control over the global cocaine market. The partnership between Pandelli and the Kinahan Cartel took shape in the luxurious and secretive environment of Dubai. After leaving Australia in 2018, Pandelli settled in Dubai, a city known for its opulent lifestyle and its role as a haven for high-profile criminals. Here, he found common ground with the Kinahans, who had also sought refuge in the city to escape legal troubles and rival gangs. Pandelli and Daniel Kinahan, in particular, became key players in this international drug operation. Their meetings were conducted in the utmost secrecy, often in private luxury venues. These high-stakes discussions were crucial in planning their global cocaine trafficking strategy. The alliance was characterized by a level of sophistication and security that reflected the high value of their illicit enterprise. Pandelli's relocation to Dubai was more than a move. It was a strategic repositioning. Dubai's status as a financial hub provided him with access to international networks and resources that were invaluable for his criminal operations. The city's high level of security and its lax regulatory environment made it an ideal base for orchestrating global drug trafficking. The collaboration between Pandelli and the Kinahans was not without its challenges. Their high-profile status made them prime targets for law enforcement agencies around the world. Despite their efforts to remain under the radar, the magnitude of their operation meant that they were always at risk of exposure. The stakes were enormous, with billions of euros and the stability of global drug markets hanging in the balance. For years, Australian federal police and international agencies had been meticulously tracking Pandelli's activities. The Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission had identified him as a priority organisation target in 2021, a designation given to individuals deemed to pose a significant threat to national security and public safety. Pandelli's extensive criminal history, dating back to 2012, had made him a key focus for law enforcement. His leadership within the Hells Angels and his significant role in Australia's cocaine market were well documented. Reports of his involvement in various criminal activities had led to increased scrutiny from Australian and international authorities. In a dramatic turn of events, Pandelli was detained in Dubai just as he was preparing to travel to Cancun, Mexico, for a major Hells Angels summit. This event, expected to be a high-profile gathering of international motorcycle gang leaders, was crucial for Pandelli's ongoing operations. His arrest not only disrupted his immediate plans, but also sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld, affecting the broader network of associates and operations connected to him. Pandelli's detention marked a significant moment in the fight against organised crime. It represented a substantial victory for law enforcement, but also highlighted the challenges of bringing such high-profile criminals to justice. The subsequent legal battles promised to be complex, involving multiple jurisdictions and significant resources. Pandelli's deportation from Dubai marked a significant moment in the fight against organised crime. His arrival back in Australia was met with extensive media coverage and a substantial police presence. For Australian authorities, this was a long-awaited opportunity to bring one of their most wanted criminals to justice. The legal proceedings against Pandelli were set to be a complex and high-profile affair. Australian law enforcement agencies were prepared to question him about his role in the global cocaine trade, his connections with the Kinahan Cartel, and his extensive network of criminal associates. His return was seen as a pivotal moment in the ongoing battle against organised crime. Pandelli's legal team was expected to mount a vigorous defense, challenging the evidence and the charges against him. The case was likely to involve a protracted legal process, with significant implications for both the Australian and international legal systems. The outcome would have a profound impact on the fight against organised crime and the global drug trade. Despite the media frenzy surrounding his arrest and deportation, the legal process for Pandelli was only beginning. The charges he would face and the potential consequences of his actions would play a crucial role in shaping the future of the global cocaine trade and the efforts to dismantle criminal networks. Pandelli's detention and return to Australia had far-reaching implications for the criminal world. The disruption of his operations represented a significant victory for law enforcement, but the global cocaine market remained a volatile and dynamic environment. The Kinahan Cartel, despite the setback, was likely to continue its operations, adapting to the loss of a key ally and seeking new ways to maintain their dominance. The case of Angelo Pandelli highlighted the intricate and perilous nature of international crime. His story illustrated the high stakes involved in the global drug trade, the complexities of international criminal networks, and the ongoing efforts of law enforcement to combat organised crime. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the world watched closely, aware that the fight against criminal enterprises was far from over, and that the quest for justice continued in this ever-evolving landscape. Pandelli's arrest and the subsequent legal battles were a testament to the relentless efforts of law enforcement agencies worldwide. The case underscored the challenges of tackling global crime and the importance of international cooperation in addressing the threats posed by sophisticated criminal organizations. As the saga continued, the focus remained on dismantling the vast networks of organized crime and ensuring that justice was served. In the wake of Pandelli's return, Australian authorities and international agencies would continue their efforts to uncover the full extent of his criminal activities and his connections with the Kinahan Cartel. The battle against organized crime was far from over, and the global drug trade remained a dangerous and dynamic field. As new alliances formed and old ones faltered, the ongoing pursuit of justice promised to be a key factor in shaping the future of global crime fighting. Noel Duggan, also known by the moniker King Size, is a name that has become synonymous with organized crime in Ireland. His life, filled with high-stakes criminal enterprises, dangerous alliances, and a violent feud between two of Ireland's most notorious criminal families, is a tale of ambition, greed, and ultimately tragedy. Duggan's journey from a troubled youth in Dublin to one of Ireland's most feared and influential criminals is marked by his involvement in the cigarette smuggling trade, his connections with the Hutch crime family, and his tragic murder at the hands of the Kinahan Cartel. His story remains one of intrigue and caution in the annals of Irish criminal history. Noel Duggan was born in the early 1970s in Dublin, Ireland, into a working-class family. While not much is known about his early years, Duggan's upbringing in the rough neighborhoods of Dublin likely played a key role in shaping his future. Growing up in an environment marked by social unrest, poverty, and violence, Duggan faced many challenges. Like many individuals raised in such conditions, he found himself drawn to a life of crime as a means of survival and, eventually, as a means of advancement. His early offenses were likely minor, such as burglaries and petty theft, but they set the foundation for the much darker path he would follow. Duggan's criminal activities were, in part, a product of the harsh Dublin streets and the rampant economic disparity. As he grew older, Duggan quickly realized that there were much larger opportunities for wealth and power in the world of organized crime. This realization would lead him into the dangerous world of smuggling and, later, to his affiliation with one of Ireland's most infamous criminal families. Duggan's early years seemed marked by struggles and adversities, but they were also foundational to his transformation into a prominent criminal figure. His connections to the underground world of Dublin's criminal scene would serve him well as he made his way up the ranks of the Irish underworld, gaining the trust and admiration of other key figures in the business. By the early 1990s, Noel Duggan's ambitions had grown, and so had the scope of his criminal activities. He became heavily involved in Ireland's cigarette smuggling trade, which at the time was a highly lucrative business. The practice involved importing large quantities of cigarettes into Ireland without paying the required taxes, resulting in a huge profit margin for those involved. It was an operation that required both smarts and discretion, and Duggan had both in abundance. His association with the smuggling trade allowed Duggan to amass significant wealth. However, unlike some of his counterparts who became embroiled in the physical labor of smuggling, Duggan was known for being a strategic figure in the operations, orchestrating the logistics behind the scenes. This allowed him to evade much of the risk involved, earning him a reputation as a shrewd and calculated criminal mastermind. Duggan's nickname, King Size, stemmed from his larger-than-life presence and his role in orchestrating one of Ireland's most prolific cigarette smuggling operations. His wealth grew rapidly as the cigarette smuggling trade flourished, and he soon became a key player within Ireland's organized crime scene. Duggan's success allowed him to build valuable relationships with other figures in the criminal underworld, most notably the Hutch crime family. a key player in Dublin's crime scene. However, despite his increasing wealth and power, Duggan managed to keep a relatively low profile. He was known to operate behind the scenes, often out of the public eye, while his criminal operations flourished. It was this ability to remain in the shadows while reaping the benefits of illicit trade that made Duggan an even more formidable figure in Ireland's criminal underworld. His growing wealth and influence made Duggan a valuable ally to those involved in organized crime, but it also made him an inevitable target for law enforcement. Despite facing several investigations into his activities, Duggan maintained a skillful ability to avoid arrest, remaining a free man despite his high-profile involvement in illicit operations. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Ireland's criminal landscape was dominated by two major families, the Hutch family and the Kinahan family. The rivalry between these two groups escalated into a violent feud that would leave a trail of bloodshed and destruction throughout the country. Duggan, whose involvement in the world of organized crime had grown over the years, became closely associated with the Hutch family. He had built up significant ties within the Hutch organization, a relationship that would prove to be both lucrative and deadly. The feud between the Hutch and Kinahan families became one of the most violent and well-documented gang wars in Ireland's history. The conflict was driven by control over drug trafficking, smuggling routes, and territory. Duggan's involvement with the Hutch family meant that he was thrust into the heart of the conflict. His strategic mind and experience in organizing criminal operations made him an asset to the Hutch side, and he played a key role in their operations. However, his involvement in this feud would eventually lead to his tragic downfall. The intense feud between the Hutch and Kinahan families was not only a battle for dominance over criminal enterprises, but also a deeply personal rivalry. The Kinahans were determined to eliminate anyone standing in their way, and Duggan, with his key role in the Hutch family, became a prime target. Duggan's connections to the Hutch family made him an even more prominent figure in the conflict, and as tensions between the two factions escalated, the risk to his life grew greater. In 2016, the violence between the two families reached a peak. The Kinahan Cartel, determined to eliminate their rivals, had no qualms about using extreme violence to gain the upper hand. Duggan, as a major player in the Hutch organization, became a prime target. His position within the Hutch group made him an enemy of the Kinahan Cartel, and it was only a matter of time before the brutal nature of the feud would catch up to him. On the morning of March 23, 2016, Noel Duggan's life came to a violent and tragic end. Duggan was shot and killed outside his home in Ratawath, County Meath. The murder was a targeted assassination, and it was widely believed to have been orchestrated by the Kinahan Cartel. His death marked a significant moment in the Hutch-Kinahan feud, and it sent a clear message to the Hutch family and their associates. The circumstances surrounding Duggan's murder were chilling. He was gunned down in broad daylight, outside his residence, an act that demonstrated the level of ruthlessness and brutality the Kinahan Cartel was willing to employ in order to eliminate their enemies. Duggan's killing was described as a cowardly and callous act during his funeral, a reflection of the public's shock and disgust over the brutal nature of the crime. His death sent ripples through Ireland's criminal world, marking a major turning point in the ongoing conflict between the two families. Duggan's death was not just a loss for the Hutch family, but also a grim reminder of the violence and bloodshed that defined the criminal landscape in Ireland during that time. His death was a tragic culmination of a life spent in the pursuit of power, wealth, and control in a world built on crime and brutality. Despite Duggan's death, the ongoing feud between the Hutch and Kinahan families continued, fueled by anger, retaliation, and a desire for control. Duggan's murder did little to quell the violence, and his passing was but one chapter in a bloody saga that would stretch on for years. Following Duggan's murder, the violence between the Hutch and Kinahan families continued unabated. The killing of Duggan served as a catalyst for further retaliation and conflict between the two groups. with both sides continuing to target each other's members and associates. The feud between the families remained one of the most high-profile and dangerous criminal conflicts in Ireland, with several other individuals being killed in the following months and years. Duggan's death also brought attention to the wider issues of organised crime in Ireland, particularly the role of criminal families in smuggling, drug trafficking, and other illegal enterprises. Law enforcement agencies in Ireland continued to investigate the Kinahan Cartel and the Hutch family, making arrests and attempting to dismantle their operations. However, the entrenched power of these criminal organizations proved difficult to challenge, and the violence associated with the feud persisted for years. Despite multiple law enforcement efforts to curtail the influence of the criminal families, Duggan's death demonstrated the deep roots these families had in the criminal world, making it difficult to disrupt their operations. Marking the end of Noel Duggan's life was the violent and untimely manner in which it occurred. Duggan's criminal legacy, particularly his role in the cigarette smuggling trade and his central position within the Hutch crime family, left an indelible mark on Ireland's criminal landscape. The aftermath of his murder served as a stark reminder of the deadly consequences of a life spent in organised crime. Duggan's story is one of ambition, ruthlessness, and tragedy. His rise from a petty criminal to one of Ireland's most influential and feared criminals was marked by his ability to avoid detection while making vast amounts of money. But his ties to the Hutch crime family, his role in the violent feud, and the ruthless Kinahan Cartel ultimately sealed his fate. Duggan's life is a cautionary tale about the dangers of the criminal world and the price that many criminals pay when they become too entrenched in a life of violence. His legacy is also a stark reflection of the cycles of violence and bloodshed that have long plagued Ireland's criminal landscape. Duggan's name continues to echo as a symbol of both the opportunities and dangers that come with organised crime. James Byrne, a notorious figure in the Dublin criminal underworld, has passed away at the age of 77. Known by the nickname Jaws, James died in Tala Hospital on a Saturday evening after a prolonged battle with illness. His death marks the end of a chapter for a family steeped in gangland activity and violence, particularly linked to the infamous Kinahan Cartel. Byrne was not only a notorious criminal in his own right, but also the father of David Byrne, who was brutally murdered in the Regency Hotel attack in 2016, and Liam Byrne, who is facing charges for organised crime-linked offences in the UK. As the father figure to some of the most notorious criminals in recent Irish history, his death has caused a stir in both the criminal and law enforcement communities. The death of James Byrne comes at a difficult time for the Byrne family. Just a few weeks earlier, another family member, his nephew Liam Rowe, also passed away after battling cancer. Rowe was another known associate of the Kinahan Cartel, further emphasizing the family's deep-rooted ties to the criminal underworld. At the time of James's death, a close relative was also arrested for public order offences and detained at Sundrive Garda Station in Dublin, signalling the ongoing troubles facing this notorious family. James Byrne's death is more than just the end of a long life. It symbolises the end of an era of a criminal who was intimately involved in one of Ireland's most vicious gangland feuds. Byrne was linked to the infamous Hutch-Kinahan feud, a violent gang war that has resulted in numerous deaths over the years. His son David Byrne's death in the Regency Hotel shooting marked a significant escalation in this feud. Sources suggest that after his son's murder, James Byrne became deeply involved in planning retaliatory attacks against the Hutch family, including a botched attempt to kill John Hutch, the brother of Jerry the Monk Hutch, in September 2016. The attack, carried out by hitman Michael Carroll, failed, but it demonstrated Byrne's thirst for vengeance and his significant role in orchestrating violence from behind the scenes. Despite his age and failing health, James Byrne remained actively involved in the feud against the Hutch family. One source stated, he was desperate for revenge over the killing of his son and wanted the Kinahan Cartel to kill as many Hutches as they could. His associates, including Liam Brannigan, met with Michael Carroll after the failed attempt on John Hutch's life, a meeting that showcased Byrne's influential role in this ongoing violent conflict. James Byrne, known as Jaws due to his aggressive demeanor, was no stranger to crime. His criminal career spanned decades, marked by various illegal activities, including armed robbery, fraud, and counterfeiting. In his younger days, Byrne was closely associated with notorious figures like Martin, the General Cahill, another violent criminal who dominated Dublin's underworld for years. Byrne specialized in stolen checks, forged documents, and fraudulent activities, which made him a target for law enforcement agencies like the Criminal Assets Bureau. Throughout his life, Byrne faced multiple legal battles. In 2002, he agreed to repay €43,000 in unemployment assistance he was not entitled to, and in 2004, he settled a cab tax assessment for over €378,000 by paying €208,000. The cab had seized cash and assets from his home multiple times, including a €35,000 Rolex watch that Byrne claimed was a gift, though he never disclosed the giver. Despite his numerous legal troubles, Byrne managed to evade lengthy prison sentences, showcasing his cunning and resilience in navigating the criminal justice system. The Byrne family, especially in Dublin's Crumlin area, became synonymous with organised crime. The neighbourhood itself was a stronghold for the Byrne organised crime group, acting as a hub for their illicit operations. James Byrne's son, Liam Byrne, lived just across the street from his parents, and his home was one of several properties seized by CAB in their ongoing efforts to disrupt the Kinahan Cartel's operations. David Byrne, another son, lived nearby until his murder in 2016. The Byrne family's close proximity to one another in Crumlin exemplifies the tight-knit yet dangerous nature of their operations, with each member playing a role in sustaining their criminal enterprise. Byrne's wife, Sadie Byrne, also played a role in the family's activities. Though not directly involved in crime, the High Court found in 2018 that she, along with James and other relatives, had access to proceeds from criminal activities carried out by the Byrne organised crime group. Despite their legal troubles and constant surveillance by law enforcement, the Byrne family maintained their presence in the criminal world, highlighting the deep entanglement of their personal and criminal lives. David Byrne's death at the Regency Hotel in 2016 was a turning point in the Hutch-Kinahan feud. The attack, carried out by members of the Hutch gang disguised as armed police, made international headlines for its brazen nature. This single event sparked a violent and bloody retaliation from the Kinahan Cartel, with James Byrne being a key figure pushing for revenge. The gang war that followed resulted in numerous murders and attacks on both sides, creating a climate of fear and tension in Dublin and beyond. Every year, James and his wife Sadie would leave floral tributes at the North Dublin Hotel where their son was murdered, a grim reminder of the violence that had claimed their son's life. However, Byrne's involvement went beyond mere grief. It transformed into a driving force for more violence. Investigators believe that Byrne, fueled by the loss of his son, helped identify targets for the Kinahan Cartel and pushed for continued aggression against the Hutch family. James Byrne was not only deeply involved in the Hutch-Kinahan feud, but also maintained strong ties with the Kinahan Cartel, led by Christy Kinahan and later by his son Daniel Kinahan. Byrne's own sons, Liam and David, were considered senior figures within the cartel, operating as major drug traffickers and organised crime figures in Dublin. Liam Byrne, currently detained in London's high-security Belmarsh prison, faces multiple charges, including conspiracy to possess firearms and perverting the course of justice. In addition to Liam Byrne, other close associates of James, such as Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, face similar charges, underlining the family's ongoing struggles with law enforcement. These trials are expected to be lengthy and complex, potentially lasting up to 8 weeks, and revealing more details about the extent of the Byrne family's criminal empire and their connection to the wider Kinahan Cartel operations. In the months leading up to his death, James Byrne's health had deteriorated significantly. In recent years, he had kept a lower profile, no longer appearing publicly at gangland funerals or other criminal gatherings. His absence was noted at the funeral of his nephew Liam Rowe, who died after his own battle with illness. Despite his failing health, Byrne's influence in the criminal world remained significant, with law enforcement continuing to monitor his activities and those of his associates closely. Byrne's death was announced with a death notice that painted a picture of a man surrounded by family and loved ones at the time of his passing. His wife Sadie, still reeling from the loss of both her son and nephew, is said to be devastated by his death. She plans to visit her son Liam in prison before his trial in the UK, highlighting the ongoing struggles the Byrne family faces in navigating both their personal and criminal lives. James Byrne's death closes a significant chapter in Dublin's gangland history, but his legacy lives on through his surviving family members and their continued involvement in crime. As a patriarch of a criminal family that played a central role in one of Ireland's most violent gang feuds, Byrne's influence and actions will be remembered for years to come. The Byrne family, with its ties to the Kinahan Cartel, remains under scrutiny by both Irish and international law enforcement agencies. The violence and bloodshed associated with their name continue to cast a shadow over Dublin's streets. The question now is what the future holds for the Byrne family without its patriarch. With Liam Byrne facing serious charges in the UK and the remaining family members still under intense surveillance, the once powerful family may be on the brink of losing its stronghold in the criminal underworld. However, as history has shown, the cycle of crime and violence is difficult to break, and the legacy of James "Jaws" Byrne may continue to influence the streets of Dublin for years to come. The death of James Byrne, a veteran of Dublin's underworld, marks the end of an era. Known for his connections to the Kinahan Cartel and his deep-seated vendetta against the Hutch family, Byrne's life was defined by violence, crime, and loss. His passing may bring some closure to a dark chapter in Ireland's gangland history, but the impact of his actions and the ongoing feud he helped fuel will likely continue to echo throughout the streets of Dublin. As the Byrne family prepares for life without their patriarch, the question remains: will this be an opportunity for the family to step away from a life of crime? Or will they continue to follow in the violent footsteps of their patriarch? Law enforcement agencies remain vigilant, knowing that the death of one gangland figure often leads to a power vacuum that others are eager to fill. The story of the Byrne family is far from over, and their criminal legacy will continue to shape the landscape of Dublin's underworld for the foreseeable future. It started like nothing. A tiny moment in a group chat. A love heart emoji. Normally, that wouldn't mean anything. In 2025, a love heart is basically the same as a thumbs up. It's approval. It's good job. It's perfect. It's done. But in this chat, it stood out. Because this wasn't the kind of conversation where love hearts belonged. Not with the subject matter. Not with the world being discussed. Not with the names that were about to come up. If there was ever a story that didn't match a love heart emoji, it was this one. Because the topic wasn't light, it wasn't funny, it wasn't harmless. It was Iran. It was international criminal networks. It was terrorism risk. It was assassinations. It was drug trafficking on a global scale. And sitting right in the middle of it, once again, was the Kinahan Cartel. A report released in the United States has triggered fresh attention on alleged links between Iran and organized crime groups operating across the world. This wasn't a tabloid headline or an online rumor. It wasn't a social media thread. It wasn't a guess. It came from the Combating Terrorism Center, an organization based at West Point, the United States Military Academy. West Point is not just famous, it's symbolic. It is where US Army officers are trained, where military thinking is shaped and where national security concerns are treated as real-world problems, not abstract theory. Inside that world, the Combating Terrorism Center produces research that gets read seriously. It is the kind of material that feeds into how threats are understood, how risks are measured, and how future dangers are predicted. And in this report, Ireland's Kinahan Cartel was named, not as a passing mention, but as an example. The report was titled Danger Zone: Terrorism Risk Theory, Practice, and Evolution. The language inside it was blunt. It warned that Iran is increasingly using criminal proxies to conduct attacks while maintaining plausible deniability. That phrase, plausible deniability, matters. It means distance. It means protection. It means that when something happens, Iran can step back and say, "It wasn't us." A criminal network can take the risk. A hired operator can pull the trigger. A gang can handle the logistics. And if the operation goes wrong, the state avoids direct blame. The report claimed that over the past 5 years, Iran carried out 157 foreign operations, and that 22 of them involved criminal proxies. It also argued that the list of criminal entities Iran is willing to work with is growing. And then came the line that caught attention far beyond the United States. It stated that Iran's partnerships ranged from Hells Angels gang members in Canada to the Kinahan Cartel in Ireland. That sentence was not random. It placed the Kinahans inside a global framework, not just as drug traffickers, but as part of a wider security concern. If this report had appeared years ago, it might have landed differently. But it didn't. It arrived at a time when the United States is sharply focused on Iran again, a time when political rhetoric is aggressive, a time when threats, warnings, and military language have returned to the headlines. The relationship between the USA and Iran has never been stable. But when tension rises, everything connected to Iran becomes more dangerous to touch. That includes criminal networks. And that is why this is a problem for the Kinahans, because when an Irish organized crime group becomes linked, even indirectly, to the state enemy of the United States, it changes the level of risk. It changes the kind of attention they attract. It changes who is watching. And it changes what those watchers are willing to do. This isn't only a United States issue. It isn't only a West Point report, because Ireland has already heard language pointing in the same direction. And it didn't come from journalists. It came from court. During proceedings connected to the MV Matthew case, Garda described what they believed was a significant Iranian nexus tied to the operation. That case was already enormous. A major drug seizure, a major international trafficking story, a reminder that the routes into Europe are bigger than most people can imagine. But the mention of Iran pushed it into another category. It suggested something deeper than a standard drug shipment. It suggested international links that stretched far beyond Ireland. So when a United States report now warns about Iran using criminal proxies, it doesn't land in a vacuum. It lands on top of evidence and suspicions that have already been building. To understand why the Kinahans are repeatedly dragged into these conversations, you have to look at the Netherlands. Because in the Netherlands, the story isn't just about drugs. It's about killings. It's about the Mokro Mafia, a Dutch-based criminal network known for extreme violence and ruthless control. It's about an arrest in Dublin that raised eyebrows across Europe. Years ago, a man named Naoufal Fassi was arrested in what was described as a Kinahan safe house in Dublin. Fassi was believed to be connected to Ridouan Taghi's organization, one of the most feared criminal structures in Europe. But what made this more than a gang story was one specific murder: the assassination of an Iranian dissident named Mohammad Reza Kolahi Samadi. Samadi was 56 years old. He had been sentenced to death in Iran after being accused of planting a bomb at the Islamic Republican Party headquarters in 1981, an attack that killed 73 people. He had been living quietly in the Netherlands under an assumed identity, blending into normal life. He had a job, he had a family. He had disappeared into the background, and then he was shot dead. Not in a war zone, not in a hostile territory, in a quiet European suburb. For Dutch authorities, this was a nightmare scenario, a political assassination carried out on their soil. The kind of event that forces governments to ask an uncomfortable question. Was this organized crime? Or was this something closer to state-directed killing? As investigators worked to understand the murder, attention moved toward the Mocro Mafia and those suspected of organizing violence across Europe. Farsi was identified as being linked to the operation. And because he was arrested in a location tied to the Kinahans, it added another layer. It suggested the Kinahans weren't just dealing drugs. It suggested they had access to hitmen, networks, and cross-border criminal resources that could be used for much more serious tasks. And then the story became even louder when a former DEA officer, Jack Kelly, spoke publicly. He stated that Daniel Kinahan was the chief suspect for hiring the Mocro Mafia. That claim didn't come from a random commentator. It came from a former US federal agent speaking on record. And once statements like that are made publicly, they don't go away. They become part of the international narrative. The report from West Point described Iran's use of criminal intermediaries as evolving. Not new, but more structured, more deliberate, more efficient. It argued that these alliances are sought out because they provide three things: efficiency, cover, reach. Criminal groups can move in places governments cannot. They can travel, arrange logistics, hide weapons, move cash, and vanish. And if something goes wrong, the state can deny involvement. That's the attraction. That's why criminal proxies are useful. And that's why a cartel like the Kinahans becomes relevant in this kind of discussion. Drug trafficking isn't just about money for criminals. It can also be about funding for operations. If a state is under sanctions, if money movement is restricted, if banking routes are blocked, crime becomes a workaround. Trafficking networks create cash flow. Smuggling routes create access. Money laundering creates movement. And when you combine state interests with criminal ability, you get a partnership that is hard to trace and hard to prove. This is one of the reasons the Kinahans became so valuable in the underworld. Their strength wasn't just violence, it was infrastructure, international contacts, logistics, routes, trusted operators, the ability to move product across borders. And that is exactly the kind of capability that makes governments nervous. There was a time when talking about Kinahan links to Iran would get you laughed at. People would dismiss it. They would say it was going too far. They would say it was conspiracy thinking. But that phase is over, because now senior guards have spoken publicly about evidence connecting the Kinahans to Dutch-based gangs who have links to Iran and Morocco. The arrest of Iranian nationals in operations like MV Matthew has added more weight, and in discussing the murder of Samadi, investigators pointed to evidence recovered that suggested the killing was wanted, with the chilling implication that the Iranians want him dead. Whether that refers to Iranian organized crime, Iranian state interests, or something else entirely, the effect is the same. The Kinahans are being spoken about in the context of Iran again and again, and the more it happens, the harder it becomes to dismiss. This story is unfolding in a world where the language has shifted. The phrase narco-terrorism has returned to the spotlight. Governments are increasingly linking drug trafficking with terrorism risk. They are treating cartels as more than criminal enterprises. They are treating them as national security threats. That shift matters, because once a group is seen as part of a terrorism-adjacent ecosystem, the response becomes harsher. It becomes more aggressive. It becomes less about arrests and more about dismantling networks entirely. And when a report from a US military-linked institution puts your name into that conversation, it doesn't help. It accelerates the pressure. For years, Dubai and the UAE have been viewed as a kind of safe zone for international figures who wanted to stay out of reach. It wasn't that crime didn't exist there. It was that public violence was rare. Gangland-style murders on the streets weren't supposed to happen. That was the unspoken rule. And then it did happen. A rare gangland murder in Dubai sent shockwaves through the underworld. But what followed was even more significant. Dubai police reacted with force, with reports that around 80 people were removed in the aftermath. That kind of response is not subtle. It sends a message. It tells everyone watching that the tolerance is gone, that the atmosphere has changed, and that the places that once felt untouchable might not stay that way. The truth is, none of these stories exist alone. A US report warning about Iran's use of criminal proxies. Irish court cases describing an Iranian nexus, a European assassination linked to violent criminal networks, growing international media attention, a shifting global attitude toward narco-terrorism, and now signs that even the UAE is tightening the grip. This isn't one problem for the Kinahans, it's many problems stacking up at once. And when pressure stacks like that, it doesn't just fade away, it builds, it tightens, and eventually, something gives. Because the more their name appears in reports like these, the less room they have to operate in the shadows. And the more they are pulled into the world of geopolitics, the less control they have over what happens next. For a long time, they survived by staying one step ahead. But now, the world is changing, and the spotlight is getting hotter. Welcome to our detailed exploration of one of Dublin's most infamous figures, Jason O'Connor. His story is one of crime, revenge, and dramatic courtroom battles that have left a significant mark on Ireland's criminal landscape. O'Connor's involvement in violent crimes, his association with the powerful Kinahan Cartel, and the intense legal battles that followed paint a chilling picture of life at the heart of organized crime. In this video, we'll dissect the complexities of his criminal career, personal vendettas, and the far-reaching consequences of his actions. Join us as we delve into the life of Jason O'Connor and uncover the layers of his turbulent existence. Jason O'Connor was born into a world where crime and violence were part of everyday life. Growing up in a tough neighborhood in Dublin, he was exposed to the harsh realities of urban crime from a young age. His environment was a breeding ground for criminal activity, with gangs like the Westies dominating the local scene. As a teenager, O'Connor was drawn into this world. The Westies, a gang notorious for its violent clashes and drug operations, became the backdrop for his early criminal career. O'Connor quickly learned the ropes of gang life, involving himself in thefts, assaults, and drug distribution. His skills and ruthlessness earned him respect and fear among his peers. By the late 1990s, the Westies were facing internal conflicts and law enforcement crackdowns, leading to their eventual disintegration. O'Connor, however, was not deterred. Instead, he adapted and sought opportunities within other criminal networks. His association with the Westies provided him with valuable connections and experience, which he leveraged as he moved into the broader world of organized crime. This early period in his life laid the groundwork for his future as a major figure in Dublin's criminal underworld. As the Westies' influence waned, Jason O'Connor found himself on the fringes of the Kinahan Cartel, one of Dublin's most powerful criminal organizations. The Kinahan Cartel was a force to be reckoned with, deeply entrenched in drug trafficking, arms dealing, and violent enforcement operations. O'Connor's involvement with the cartel marked a significant shift in his criminal career, elevating him from a local thug to an associate of a high-profile crime syndicate. Despite not being a top leader within the cartel, O'Connor played a critical role in various criminal activities. He was involved in violent schemes and conspiracies that were central to the cartel's operations. Evidence seized from encrypted communications revealed the extent of his involvement, including detailed plans for violent retribution and tactical operations against rival gangs. The Kinahan Cartel was embroiled in a violent feud with the Hutch gang, leading to widespread bloodshed across Dublin. O'Connor's role in this conflict was significant, as he participated in and facilitated several violent acts against Hutch gang members and their associates. His involvement in the cartel not only amplified his criminal activities, but also tied him to a series of high-profile, violent incidents. A pivotal moment in Jason O'Connor's life occurred in June 2015, when his close friend Keith Walker was murdered. Walker, who had been using O'Connor's car, was mistakenly targeted by Christopher MacDonald, a hitman hired for a different target. Dressed in drag to evade detection, MacDonald fired multiple shots at Walker, leading to his tragic death. The murder was a case of mistaken identity, as Walker was an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire of a violent feud. The impact of Walker's death on O'Connor was profound. Consumed by grief and anger, he embarked on a personal crusade for revenge. O'Connor was convinced that Walker's murder was part of a larger conspiracy and that several individuals were responsible for the act. This belief drove him to target those he suspected of being involved, further escalating the cycle of violence in Dublin. O'Connor's quest for revenge was marked by a series of violent incidents, including attempts to track and eliminate those he believed were connected to Walker's murder. His actions during this period were fueled by a personal vendetta that intensified his involvement in Dublin's criminal underworld. In December 2016, Jason O'Connor faced serious legal trouble when he was charged with conspiring to murder Charlie Cooper, an individual he blamed for his friend Keith Walker's death. The charge was grave and reflected the violent nature of O'Connor's criminal activities. The conspiracy involved detailed plans and preparations to execute a high-profile hit, demonstrating O'Connor's willingness to engage in severe criminal operations. Rather than face trial for the full charge of attempted murder, O'Connor opted to plead guilty to a reduced charge of conspiracy to murder. This strategic move was part of a broader negotiation with the prosecution, aimed at securing a lesser sentence. During this period, O'Connor's criminal activities were not limited to this single charge. His involvement in other gang-related operations was also under scrutiny, with evidence indicating that he was deeply embedded in ongoing criminal activities. The charges against O'Connor spanned from August to December 2016, a period marked by intense violence and instability in Dublin. The prosecution's case against him was bolstered by decrypted messages and evidence of his involvement in planning and executing violent operations, further complicating his legal situation. Jason O'Connor's courtroom appearances were marked by intense drama and volatility. One of the most notable incidents occurred during the trial of Christopher MacDonald, the hitman responsible for the murder of O'Connor's friend, Keith Walker. As O'Connor prepared to testify, a heated exchange erupted when MacDonald called him a rat in court. This outburst led to a near collapse of the trial, highlighting the high emotional stakes and the personal animosity between the individuals involved. The courtroom scene was chaotic, with shouting from spectators and requests from the defense to halt the proceedings. The disruption was significant enough to draw attention from the media and public, underscoring the volatility surrounding O'Connor's legal battles. Despite the turbulence, the trial continued, and MacDonald was eventually convicted for his role in Walker's murder. This episode in the courtroom not only revealed O'Connor's volatile temperament, but also underscored the high tensions and personal conflicts inherent in his legal struggles. The drama surrounding the case contributed to the overall complexity of his legal and criminal situation. Jason O'Connor's defense team worked to portray him as a man deeply affected by personal trauma and mental instability. They argued that the death of his friend Keith Walker had a devastating impact on O'Connor, leading to significant psychological distress. Evidence presented in court included claims that O'Connor was suffering from severe mental health issues and was on antipsychotic medication at the time of his criminal activities. The defense painted a picture of O'Connor as a victim of a violent and troubled environment, arguing that his upbringing and exposure to violence contributed to his criminal behavior. They emphasized the personal toll of his involvement in organized crime and the psychological impact of his experiences. Despite these claims, the court remained focused on the severity of O'Connor's criminal actions. The legal system's approach to organized crime was stringent, with little leniency for individuals involved in violent and high-profile criminal activities. O'Connor's personal struggles were acknowledged, but did not significantly alter the course of his legal proceedings. Jason O'Connor's criminal activities had a profound and far-reaching impact on Dublin's criminal landscape. His involvement in violent incidents, including the targeting of individuals he believed were responsible for his friend Walker's murder, exacerbated the already volatile environment of gang warfare in the city. The personal vendettas and gang-related feuds contributed to a cycle of violence that affected many lives. O'Connor's actions were part of a broader pattern of criminal behavior that had significant consequences for the community. The ripple effects of his involvement in organized crime included increased violence, instability, and fear within Dublin. His story serves as a stark reminder of the destructive nature of organized crime and the personal retribution that can fuel further violence. As Dublin continues to grapple with the legacy of O'Connor's criminal activities, his impact on the criminal world remains a testament to the far-reaching consequences of a life entrenched in crime. With Jason O'Connor facing a lengthy prison sentence, his future remains uncertain. The possibility of spending decades behind bars looms large, with his eventual release unlikely to occur until he is well into old age. During his incarceration, the criminal landscape in Dublin will continue to evolve, with new figures and organizations emerging in his absence. O'Connor's legacy will be shaped by his criminal career, personal vendettas, and the broader impact of his actions on Dublin's criminal underworld. His story is a complex tale of violence, revenge, and the harsh realities of organized crime. As Dublin moves forward, the consequences of O'Connor's actions will linger, serving as a reminder of the destructive potential of a life lived in the shadows of crime.
On a tranquil September morning in 2015, amidst the warm glow of sunrise, a harrowing incident transpired within a Spanish apartment complex. Concealed within the shadows of an underground car park, an assailant, shrouded in a black balaclava, lay in ambush behind a vehicle. Patiently biding time, he awaited the return of his intended target, a routine morning jogger. Having meticulously observed his victim for days, the assassin seized the moment as soon as the individual entered his line of sight. Swiftly emerging from the concealment, he aimed his weapon, only to be thwarted by a malfunctioning firearm. Seizing this unexpected opportunity, the intended victim managed to evade immediate danger, setting off a frantic pursuit. The atmosphere crackled with tension as the two figures sprinted, their footsteps echoing across the outdoor pool area. In a cornered and desperate state, the pursued individual made a dash towards a sealed gate, desperately seeking refuge. However, there was no reprieve, and the assailant unleashed a barrage of shots. Tragically, the victim was identified as Gary Hutch, the nephew of Jerry the Monk Hutch, a notorious figure in the criminal underworld involved in illicit drug dealings. The incident marked the untimely demise of Gary Hutch on the spot. Hutch shared a common background with his assailant, an individual who, like him, sought to establish a criminal career under the sun. Once aligned with the Kinahan gang, Hutch's trajectory took a dark turn when accusations of betrayal branded him as a potential informant within the cartel's ranks. In the aftermath of a bold attack, James Quinn, known as Frizzy due to his distinctive hair, exuded confidence in having eluded the grasp of the law. He orchestrated the burning of the getaway vehicle, a pilfered BMW X3, not far from the scene of the murder. Unbeknownst to him, a vigilant neighbor witnessed the act and promptly extinguished the flames. Shortly thereafter, law enforcement capitalized on this crucial lead. The discovery of DNA traces, specifically found on a black Oakley baseball cap recovered from the torched BMW, ignited a comprehensive investigation. This inquiry triggered a series of coordinated raids and search operations spanning both Dublin and southern Spain. The subsequent year unraveled Quinn's fugitive existence when he was apprehended in Madrid while attempting to board a flight. The meticulous work of undercover police operatives included obtaining Quinn's DNA from a water bottle used at a train station in Madrid. This genetic evidence seamlessly matched the DNA recovered from the cap found at the BMW crime scene. The capture marked a significant triumph for law enforcement, exposing Quinn as an individual deeply entrenched in a life marked by crime and violence. Fast forward to 2018, and the courtroom set the stage for justice to finally apprehend James Quinn. A Spanish judge handed down a 20-year prison sentence for the murder, coupled with an additional 2 years for illegal weapons possession. Throughout the trial, Quinn consistently maintained that he was in bed with a hangover and a prostitute at the time of Hutch's killing. However, he failed to produce any evidence substantiating this alibi. Despite widespread beliefs implicating Quinn, a childhood friend of Daniel Kinahan, as the triggerman, the judge could not definitively establish his role as the shooter. Nevertheless, Quinn was deemed a necessary participant, serving as a lookout and getaway driver. The potential for a life sentence was dismissed due to the inability to prove Quinn's affiliation with the criminal organization implicated in the murder. Furthermore, the jurors ruled out any concrete evidence suggesting that Quinn received payment for the hit. The gun, leading to his conviction, was discovered in a bedside table during a search of Quinn's residence. The courtroom drama concluded with Quinn's sentencing, underscoring the complexities of establishing certain aspects of his involvement in the crime. Efforts by James Quinn's legal team to overturn his conviction faced a resounding rejection from 3 appeal judges who dismissed every aspect of the lawyer's claims, asserting his wrongful conviction. Quinn's incarceration delivered a significant blow to Daniel Kinahan and his criminal network. According to law enforcement sources, Quinn, known as Frizzy, posed a substantial threat to public safety throughout his criminal career. His gun attack on Gary Hutch initiated a violent underworld conflict famously known as the Kinahan-Hutch feud, a feud that has claimed multiple lives. Quinn's criminal history extends beyond the ordinary. He wasn't merely a foot soldier, but a key player in a perilous game. As the nephew of Martin Foley, also known as the Viper, and a former member of a gang led by Martin the General Cahill, Quinn's connections run deep within the criminal underworld. His affiliation with the Kinahan gang, one of Ireland's most notorious crime syndicates, underscores the magnitude of his influence and the inherent danger he represents. A highly skilled former kickboxer, Quinn spent a decade splitting his time between Dublin and Spain, predominantly residing near Marbella in the years leading up to his arrest. His arrest marked a turning point in the criminal saga of an individual deeply embedded in the dangerous world of organized crime. Dublin's law enforcement had issued grave warnings to James Quinn, alerting him to the imminent danger to his life. Functioning as an enforcer in the realm of drug dealing, Quinn solidified his standing through a series of violent criminal acts, amassing a reputation underscored by over 70 convictions, ranging from traffic offenses to brutal assaults. In 2008, Quinn assaulted a Garda on South Great George's Street, marking a pivotal moment in his criminal history. 2 months later, he was suspected of shooting a Dublin drug addict in the knees after the intruder had broken into a residence. Despite the severity of these incidents, the victim declined to file a complaint with the Garda, resulting in Quinn avoiding formal charges. In July 2013, Quinn faced sentencing at the Dublin Circuit Court for threatening a bouncer who had ejected him from a city centre pub. The court heard details of how Quinn, rather than outright threatening the bouncer at the time of ejection, ominously warned him of impending regret. Quinn later pursued the bouncer to his residence, where, at a traffic stop, he reappeared with a hammer, shattering the bouncer's windshield. "I told you you'd be sorry, you bastard," Quinn declared, emphasizing the sinister nature of his actions. This incident further added to Quinn's notorious criminal record, painting a vivid picture of his volatile and dangerous tendencies. In the subsequent year, Gerard Hatchet Kavanagh, a 44-year-old Dubliner employed as an enforcer for the Kinahan gang, met a fatal end in a bar near Marbella. His demise was a result of an internal dispute within the Kinahan gang. Kavanagh had established a reputation as an enforcer in the Irish underworld, acting on behalf of the Kinahan Cartel. His role involved coercively collecting payment for drug debts in both Ireland and Spain. Prior to this, he had a history as a drug dealer. Kavanagh's son, Jamie, was present at the infamous weigh-in at the Regency Hotel in 2016, where a shooting occurred. The internal discord within the Kinahan gang that led to Kavanagh's demise stemmed from accusations of theft and involvement in defrauding Russian gangsters. James Quinn emerged as the chief suspect in orchestrating Kavanagh's murder. Additionally, Quinn was suspected of complicity in the killing of Kavanagh's brother Paul just 6 months later. During the operation that culminated in Quinn's arrest in Madrid, Spanish law enforcement seized a yacht and a Bentley car suspected to be linked to James Quinn. Simultaneously, in Dublin, police confiscated €3,000 in cash, along with computers, phones, counterfeit identification papers, and financial documents tied to property transactions and offshore bank accounts. Following his arrest, Quinn found himself incarcerated in Archidona Prison, a maximum security facility notorious for housing infamous criminals. Notably, this prison was the same institution where Christy Kinahan and his sons, Daniel and Christopher Jr., had been detained after their arrests in May 2010 as part of Operation Shovel. a major police operation targeting drug trafficking and money laundering. Phone taps conducted by the Spanish police unveiled that James Quinn and Gary Hutch maintained regular contact. During these intercepted calls, Quinn and Hutch were heard discussing matters such as hiring prostitutes, contradicting Quinn's earlier assertion that they were not associates. Subsequently, Quinn was transferred to Topus Jail, a remote high-security facility in western Spain, situated 26 kilometers outside the city of Salamanca. Notably, Topus Jail houses ETA terror leaders and prominent Moroccan Al-Qaeda prisoners. Ironically, Quinn had previously shared a prison cell with Derek Delboy Hutch, Gary Hutch's brother, in Wheatfield Prison in 2011. At that time, Quinn and Delboy were close associates, having been part of the same gang. Their placement together was influenced by Delboy's offer of protection to Quinn. However, as time passed, Quinn found himself compelled to choose sides when Gary fell out of favor with the cartel. Despite Quinn's earlier loyalty to the cartel, especially to Daniel Kinahan, just 4 years after sharing a prison cell with Delboy, Quinn was enlisted by the Kinahans to orchestrate the murder of Delboy's brother. Having now been convicted of killing another notorious figure in the gangland scene, Quinn faces several decades in prison. However, the prospect of future threats looms large, particularly when he is eventually released. Members of the Hutch gang have consistently blamed Quinn for Gary's murder and vowed revenge, suggesting that Quinn's post-incarceration life may be fraught with danger.
Nathan Kinsella's story begins in the tumultuous landscape of Dublin during the early 2000s. Born into a society grappling with economic hardship and social unrest, Kinsella's early years were marked by the complexities of urban life in Ireland. His entry into the world of crime came through his association with the Real IRA, a splinter group that rejected the peace process and sought to continue the armed struggle against British rule. The Real IRA was known for its radical ideology and violent tactics, setting itself apart from other paramilitary groups by focusing on attacks against both the British state and those they deemed as collaborators. Kinsella, driven by a combination of ideological fervor and personal ambition, quickly aligned himself with this faction. His rise through the ranks was not without challenges. He had to navigate the dangerous world of paramilitary politics, often marked by internal rivalries and violent power struggles. Kinsella's early involvement was characterized by his role in orchestrating violent acts, extorting businesses, and managing arms trafficking operations. His activities were not just a means of earning money, but were intertwined with a broader strategy to establish and maintain power within the organization. This period of his life laid the foundation for his later criminal enterprises and shaped his reputation as a ruthless and efficient operative. By the mid-2000s, Nathan Kinsella's growing influence caught the attention of Jimmy Mansfield Jr., a wealthy and influential figure in Dublin's criminal underworld. Mansfield Jr. and his family had established a significant empire, and their business interests spanned various sectors, including real estate and construction. However, their empire was increasingly entangled with criminal activities, and they needed strong connections to maintain and expand their operations. Kinsella's entry into Mansfield Jr.'s sphere marked a significant turning point. Mansfield Jr. sought Kinsella's expertise to manage and protect his business interests amidst growing threats and competition. This partnership was forged out of necessity, with Kinsella providing the muscle and connections needed to safeguard Mansfield's assets and enforce his will. Their collaboration involved a range of illicit activities, including money laundering, extortion, and violent enforcement actions. Kinsella's role was crucial in managing these operations, utilizing his network within the Real IRA to provide the necessary support and intimidation required. The partnership was mutually beneficial. Mansfield Jr. gained protection and expanded his influence, while Kinsella leveraged Mansfield's resources to further his own criminal enterprises. The death of Alan Ryan in 2012 was a watershed moment for Nathan Kinsella. Ryan, a prominent leader within the Real IRA, was killed in a violent confrontation, leading to a significant power vacuum within the organization. Ryan's death triggered a period of intense internal conflict, as various factions within the Real IRA vied for control and influence. Kinsella, having been closely associated with Ryan, found himself at the center of this turmoil. His position became increasingly precarious as rival factions challenged his authority and sought to undermine his influence. During this period, Kinsella was involved in several violent confrontations, including an attempted assassination that left him wounded. Despite these setbacks, Kinsella managed to navigate the chaotic environment and maintain his standing within the organization. His survival during this period was a testament to his resilience and adaptability. He emerged from this phase with a reinforced sense of determination and a deepened commitment to his criminal activities. By 2018, Nathan Kinsella had secured a lavish residence in Black Rock, an affluent suburb of Dublin. This move represented a significant shift in his lifestyle and marked a new phase in his criminal career. The mansion, acquired through a complex arrangement involving a front builder named Jerry McGreevy, was emblematic of Kinsella's attempts to project an image of success and legitimacy. The Black Rock property was more than just a residence. It served as a central hub for Kinsella's ongoing criminal activities. The mansion's opulence was a stark contrast to the violent and chaotic world Kinsella had previously inhabited. It became a base for laundering money, coordinating criminal operations, and maintaining connections with other criminal elements. The choice of Black Rock, known for its affluent residents and prestigious reputation, was strategic. Kinsella aimed to distance himself from his past associations and present a veneer of respectability. However, the mansion quickly attracted attention from law enforcement and investigators who were keenly aware of Kinsella's criminal background and the dubious nature of his financial dealings. Between 2018 and 2020, Nathan Kinsella was deeply involved in a sophisticated money laundering operation. Over this 2-year period, approximately €230,000 flowed through various accounts under Kinsella's control. The operation was designed to obscure the origins of the money and integrate it into legitimate financial channels. Kinsella's involvement in the money laundering scheme was complex and involved multiple layers of transactions. He utilized a network of shell companies and front organizations to manage and conceal the funds. This elaborate scheme was not just a means of avoiding detection, but a way to further his criminal enterprises and secure additional resources. Kinsella's claim that the money was given to him by a wealthy individual as a gift was met with skepticism. Given his criminal background and the nature of the funds, investigators were highly dubious of his explanation. The complexity of the money laundering operation and the substantial amounts of money involved pointed to a well-organized and deliberate effort to evade legal scrutiny. As investigations into Kinsella's activities intensified, he found himself embroiled in a series of legal challenges. The charges against him included money laundering and failure to pay capital acquisitions tax, a serious financial crime that carried significant penalties. Kinsella's legal strategy involved negotiating a guilty plea in hopes of reducing his exposure to more severe charges. The courtroom proceedings were highly charged, with Kinsella attempting to present himself as a victim of circumstance rather than a perpetrator of crime. His defense argued that the charges were exaggerated and that he was being unfairly targeted. Despite these efforts, the evidence against Kinsella was overwhelming, and he was ultimately convicted. The legal battles highlighted the complexities of dealing with financial crimes and the challenges of navigating the criminal justice system. Kinsella's guilty plea resulted in financial penalties and a tarnished reputation, marking a significant setback in his criminal career. Nathan Kinsella's decline was marked by a series of personal and professional setbacks. The once prominent figure in Dublin's criminal world found himself facing the consequences of his actions. The Black Rock mansion, once a symbol of his success, became a reminder of his downfall. Kinsella's attempts to reinvent himself as a legitimate businessman were overshadowed by his criminal past. His involvement in the money laundering operation and the subsequent legal battles led to a significant erosion of his influence and resources. The collapse of his criminal empire was a stark reminder of the volatile and unpredictable nature of life in organized crime. The sentencing phase of Kinsella's legal troubles underscored the dramatic reversal of fortune. The lavish lifestyle he once enjoyed was replaced by legal and financial difficulties, marking the end of an era for Kinsella and his criminal activities. As the Kinahan feud intensified, Kinsella's name resurfaced in connection with violent events. Eamon Cumberton, a hitman for the Kinahan Cartel, was serving a life sentence for the murder of Michael Barr, a key figure in the feud. Barr's murder was part of a broader conflict that saw multiple killings linked to the Kinahan rivalry. Cumberton, who was serving time in Portlaoise prison, had a vendetta against Kinsella. He accused Kinsella of attacking his mother's home on the night Barr was killed. This accusation further complicated Kinsella's situation and led to heightened tensions within the prison. In July 2023, Kinsella was transferred from Portlaoise prison to a Midlands facility. The decision came after Cumberton made it clear to prison authorities that he intended to harm Kinsella. The authorities, recognizing the immediate threat, acted swiftly to separate the two inmates. Kinsella had only just handed himself over to serve a one-year sentence for failing to pay taxes on substantial sums of money he claimed were gifts. The move to the Midlands was a precautionary measure to ensure Kinsella's safety, reflecting the complex and dangerous nature of his criminal past. The transfer underscored the ongoing conflicts and vendettas that defined Kinsella's life, and highlighted the broader issues of violence and retribution within the criminal landscape. Nathan Kinsella's story is a compelling narrative of ambition, crime, and eventual downfall. His rise from a key figure in the real IRA to a convicted criminal reflects broader themes within organized crime and its transient nature. Kinsella's journey highlights the risks and consequences associated with operating in the criminal underworld. As investigations into his activities continue and his sentencing is finalized, Kinsella's story serves as a cautionary tale. His legacy, marked by both criminal success and ultimate failure, offers insights into the shifting dynamics of organized crime and the challenges faced by those who operate within its confines. The broader implications of his story reflect the ongoing evolution of criminal enterprises and the enduring impact of legal and financial accountability. Brad Dempsey was born in the early 1990s in Dublin, Ireland, into a world of crime, violence, and intrigue. His father, Fat Freddie Thompson, was one of the most infamous and feared figures in the Irish underworld, a criminal mastermind with a reputation that stretched across Dublin and beyond. As a son of such a notorious figure, Brad was exposed to the world of organized crime from a very young age, whether he was aware of it or not. His mother, Vicky Dempsey, would later testify that she feared for her son's future, knowing that his upbringing would be shaped by the dangerous world around him. Dublin itself during the 1990s was rife with gang violence and drug dealing, and many children in the city were influenced by the chaos around them. For Brad, the line between right and wrong was often blurred, and his early years would soon see him pulled into a world of crime that would define his life. As a child, Brad's life wasn't like that of most kids. He was thrust into the world of criminality due to his father's lifestyle. While most children were playing games and attending school, Brad's formative years were spent in the shadows of his father's violent empire. His father, Freddie Thompson, was a leader in Dublin's criminal underworld, heavily involved in drug trafficking, extortion, and a series of violent murders. As Brad grew older, he witnessed his father's influence in Dublin and understood that this life, however dangerous, was one that his family was entrenched in. At the age of just 9 years old, Brad's criminal exposure took a shocking turn. He was reportedly used by the notorious Kinahan Cartel, a gang linked to his father's operation, to smuggle a significant sum of money. According to reports, he was used as a drug cash mule to carry €5,000 through Malaga Airport in Spain. It's unclear how much Brad understood of the situation, but his involvement marked a disturbing initiation into the criminal world at a very young age. His early exposure to illegal activities would prove to have a lasting impact on Brad, shaping the trajectory of his life. His mother, while acknowledging that Brad was influenced by his father's actions, expressed her deep guilt and sorrow for the choices that led her son down this dangerous path. As Brad entered his teenage years, the influence of his father and the criminal lifestyle became more apparent. Freddie Thompson, known for his ruthlessness and dominance in the Irish underworld, continued to be a figure of power, and Brad couldn't escape his father's legacy. The young Dempsey had been exposed to criminal activities at a young age, and his proximity to such violence and criminality would come to shape his worldview. While Brad was still in his early teens, his father's criminal activities were getting more complicated and violent. Thompson's criminal empire had expanded beyond just drug trafficking into extortion, money laundering, and eventually, involvement in organized crime syndicates across Europe. Freddie's ties to violent gangs and his role as a key figure in the Dublin criminal scene made him a target for law enforcement, but also a respected and feared figure within the criminal community. At the age of 17, Brad was seen at several criminal events, further cementing his involvement in his father's criminal network. While it's unclear whether Brad was directly involved in any illegal activities at this point, it was apparent that he was moving in the same circles as his father. His actions and associations began to signal that he was being groomed to take on a larger role in the family business. As the years passed, the grip of law enforcement on Freddie Thompson's criminal empire grew tighter. In 2005, Thompson was arrested for the murder of David Douglas, a prominent figure in the criminal world, leading to a lengthy trial. Freddie Thompson was later sentenced to life imprisonment for his involvement in the murder. While his father was behind bars, Brad's life continued to unfold in the shadow of his father's arrest. His criminal activities, however, were just beginning to take shape. The void left by his father's incarceration saw Brad become more involved in the Dublin criminal scene. It's not clear whether he was fully in charge of the operations during this period or merely a figurehead in the background, but his name began circulating more frequently in association with his father's former associates. As Brad Dempsey grew older, his name became synonymous with violence and criminality. By the time he was in his early 20s, he had gained a reputation as a dangerous and unpredictable figure. While his father had been a criminal mastermind who used his intellect and strategic mind, Brad was more volatile and willing to engage in violent confrontations. His reputation as a ruthless enforcer started to spread, especially in the context of gang rivalries that were increasingly erupting in Dublin. In 2017, Brad Dempsey was arrested for his involvement in a violent shooting incident. It was just one of several acts of aggression that Brad was accused of carrying out, and it served to further solidify his role in his father's criminal activities. In a shocking turn of events, it was reported that Brad had taken part in a series of shootouts and confrontations between rival factions in the Dublin criminal world. It was clear that he was not only continuing his father's legacy, but also establishing his own reputation as a ruthless figure in the city. By 2022, Brad Dempsey had reached a critical point in his criminal career. In January of that year, he was arrested in connection with a shooting incident that occurred on Margaret Kennedy Road in Dublin 8. During the shooting, Brad fired 5 shots into a car occupied by 4 individuals. The shooting was part of a larger escalation in the gangland violence that had taken hold of Dublin, and it was seen as another violent act in a long line of similar crimes committed by members of the criminal underworld. Brad Dempsey was later convicted of possession of a firearm and other related charges, and in 2023, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. His sentence, while significant, did little to reduce his prominence in the criminal world. During his time in Mountjoy Prison, Dempsey was known for causing problems with other inmates, and he was kept in isolation for his own safety due to the nature of his criminal background. During his time in prison, the possibility of a reunion between Brad Dempsey and his father, Freddie Thompson, was discussed. However, prison staff expressed significant concerns about the risks of such a meeting. Given the high-profile nature of both individuals and the violent reputations they held, any attempt for a father-son reunion would have posed serious security risks. Both Freddie and Brad were seen as high-value targets within the prison system, and staff were highly cautious about any interaction between them. Despite their shared history and criminal ties, the likelihood of a reunion between father and son remained slim, with both individuals seemingly operating in separate spheres of the criminal world. Freddie Thompson, serving a life sentence for the murder of David Douglas, continued to serve time in Portlaoise Prison. Meanwhile, Brad Dempsey's life in Mountjoy Prison remained clouded by further violent outbursts and clashes with other inmates. Brad Dempsey's life, much like his father's, has been defined by crime and violence. Growing up in a household where criminality was the norm, Brad's exposure to the underworld was inevitable. From a young age, he was thrust into a dangerous world, and his actions as an adult mirrored the path his father had carved before him. However, it's clear that Brad has his own violent streak, and that he is willing to use force to protect his interests. As a young man, Brad had the world at his feet, but his potential was overshadowed by the criminal influences that surrounded him. The tragic story of Brad Dempsey is one of opportunity lost, and a life wasted on violence and criminality. As of now, Brad Dempsey remains incarcerated in Mountjoy Prison, Dublin, serving his sentence for the 2022 shooting incident. The future for Brad remains uncertain. His violent tendencies, coupled with his criminal family ties, make his rehabilitation unlikely. However, his life behind bars is not entirely devoid of drama, as his time in prison has been marked by numerous altercations with fellow inmates. The likelihood of his continued involvement in the criminal world remains high once he eventually serves his sentence, and whether he will ever be able to break free from his father's legacy is a question that remains unanswered. The story of Brad Dempsey serves as a stark reminder of how a criminal legacy can shape the lives of those born into it. From a young boy involved in illegal activities to a violent enforcer in Dublin's criminal world, Brad has walked the same path as his father. Whether he will be able to escape this path and forge a new future remains to be seen. But for now, he remains another product of Ireland's deeply entrenched criminal culture. In the shadowy realm of Ireland's criminal landscape, few names evoke as much fear and fascination as James Nellie Walsh. Currently, Walsh finds himself in an unprecedented and perilous situation, not running from the long arm of the law, but from the very criminal fraternity he once called his own. With a staggering $200,000 bounty on his head, Walsh has become the most hunted figure in Ireland's underworld, a testament to the volatile and treacherous nature of organised crime in the country. Walsh's journey into the heart of Ireland's criminal world began in the gritty streets of Dublin's Ronanstown area. From his teenage years, Walsh showed a propensity for lawlessness, quickly ascending the ranks of local gangs. By the early 2010s, he had established himself as a force to be reckoned with in West Dublin's criminal scene. What set Walsh apart from his peers was not just his ruthlessness, but his brazen desire for notoriety. In an era where most criminals seek to operate in the shadows, Walsh reveled in the limelight. He frequently took to social media, posting images of himself brandishing weapons, wearing balaclavas, and issuing threats to rivals. This unusual behavior not only elevated his profile within criminal circles, but also made him a subject of intense interest for law enforcement and the public alike. At the heart of Walsh's notoriety lies the so-called Clondalkin Feud, a protracted and bloody conflict that has claimed multiple lives and left a trail of destruction across Dublin and beyond. The feud, primarily between Walsh's faction and a gang affiliated with the notorious Kinahan Cartel, has its roots in a complex web of personal vendettas, territorial disputes, and the cutthroat economics of the drug trade. The spark that ignited this powder keg can be traced back to a series of events in the early 2010s. In 2011, Walsh's associates were suspected of involvement in the killing of a man named Dean Johnson. This incident, while tragic, might have remained just another statistic in Dublin's gang violence. However, it set in motion a chain of events that would escalate the conflict to unprecedented levels. 2 years later, in 2013, another Dean Johnson, unrelated to the first, became an innocent victim of this brewing war. In a twist of fate that seems almost too cruel to be true, this Johnson had the misfortune of swapping jackets with Walsh in a pub one fateful night. As he left the establishment, he was mistaken for Walsh by rival gangsters and gunned down in cold blood. This case of mistaken identity not only claimed an innocent life, but also served to intensify the hatred between the warring factions. The violence reached new heights with the chilling murder of Gerard Eglinton in September 2012. Eglinton, a criminal with links to another notorious figure, Brian Rattigan, was shot dead in front of his stepdaughter and 3-year-old son in Port Arlington, County Laois. The brutality of this killing, carried out with complete disregard for the presence of children, shocked even the hardened members of Ireland's criminal underworld. Once again, Walsh's associates were suspected of involvement, further cementing their reputation as ruthless guns for hire. The involvement of the Kinahan Cartel in this feud added a new dimension to the conflict. The Kinahan organization, known for its international reach and sophisticated operations, brought significant resources and manpower to bear against Walsh and his allies. This escalation turned what might have remained a localized dispute into a conflict with national implications. One of the key figures in this Kinahan-affiliated opposition was Padraig Keating, a high-ranking member of the Clondalkin gang. Keating's involvement in the feud became personal following the murder of his brother-in-law, Jason J. Carroll, in 2013. Carroll's killing was believed to be in retaliation for the mistaken identity shooting of Dean Johnson, which Walsh's faction blamed on Carroll. The involvement of such high-profile criminals as Keating and the broader Kinahan organization elevated the stakes of the conflict. It was no longer just about local rivalries. It had become a war for supremacy in Ireland's criminal hierarchy. While much of Walsh's criminal career has been marked by his ability to evade justice, he hasn't been entirely untouchable. His most serious conviction came in 2014, resulting in a 10-year sentence for a failed assassination attempt on Michael Fraser, a car dealer with alleged ties to the criminal underworld. The incident that led to this conviction was as brutal as it was bizarre. Walsh, hired as a hitman, ambushed Fraser in a church car park in Clondalkin. He shot Fraser multiple times, causing severe injuries. However, in a turn of events that seems almost comical in its ineptitude, Walsh accidentally shot himself in the leg during the attack. This self-inflicted injury not only allowed Fraser to escape with his life, but also provided crucial evidence that led to Walsh's conviction. The fact that Walsh had been part of Fraser's own circle of associates before turning on him highlights the fluid and treacherous nature of allegiances in the criminal world. It's a stark reminder that in this world, there are no permanent friends, only permanent interests. Walsh's time in prison did little to diminish his influence or his propensity for violence. While incarcerated, he was reportedly assaulted multiple times by individuals connected to his many enemies, a testament to the long reach of criminal vendettas. Despite these challenges, Walsh managed to maintain his network and influence, a feat that speaks to his cunning and the loyalty he commanded from his associates. His release in July 2022 marked a new chapter in the ongoing saga. Far from lying low or attempting to distance himself from his criminal past, Walsh seemed to embrace his notoriety with renewed vigor. Since his release, Walsh has found himself at the center of increasingly violent attempts on his life. In October 2022, he narrowly escaped a machine gun attack in Tala, where he was lured under the pretense of a drug deal. The audacity of this attack, using such a high-powered weapon in a residential area, underscores the disregard for public safety that characterizes these gang conflicts. Following this incident, Walsh fled Dublin for County Wexford, seeking refuge from his pursuers. However, even in this new location, danger followed him. During a trip to Carlow to purchase a car, he was ambushed by armed individuals. Miraculously, Walsh escaped unscathed, though the attack posed a significant risk to innocent bystanders, with stray bullets even piercing a nearby house. These close calls, rather than sobering Walsh, seem to have emboldened him. Reports suggest that while hiding out in Wexford, he brazenly visited pubs wearing a bulletproof vest, boasting about his ability to survive assassination attempts. This behavior left law enforcement officials baffled and concerned about the potential for further violence. In a modern twist to this age-old conflict, Walsh has taken to social media platforms like TikTok to taunt his enemies. In recent videos, he openly named rivals, including Padraig Keating, branding them as rats. This digital provocation represents a new frontier in gangland feuds, where conflicts that once played out solely on the streets now find expression in the virtual world. The consequences of these online taunts have been all too real. Shortly after Walsh's TikTok posts, an arson attack occurred on a house in Clondalkin. Authorities suspect this was a retaliatory act orchestrated by associates of Keating. Tragically, the home belonged to an innocent family with no direct involvement in the feud, highlighting the indiscriminate nature of the violence and its impact on the wider community. As of the latest reports, Walsh remains in hiding, constantly moving between locations to evade his pursuers. Recent intelligence suggests he may have taken refuge in a town in County Kildare, associating with local criminals. This has led to a surge in armed police patrols in the area, as authorities attempt to prevent further violence and potentially apprehend Walsh. The $200,000 bounty on Walsh's head remains active, a sum that ensures he will continue to be hunted by opportunistic criminals and vengeful enemies alike. This ongoing threat has turned Walsh into a paradoxical figure, a man who simultaneously seeks the limelight through his social media antics while needing to remain hidden to stay alive. The saga of James Nellie Walsh is more than just a tale of one man's criminal career. It serves as a microcosm of the larger issues plaguing Ireland's fight against organised crime. The longevity and intensity of the Clondalkin feud highlight the entrenched nature of these criminal networks and the challenges faced by law enforcement in dismantling them. The feud has exposed the interconnectedness of various criminal groups across Ireland, from local gangs to international cartels like the Kinahan organisation. It has also shown how personal vendettas can escalate into full-scale wars that engulf entire communities. Moreover, the Walsh saga underscores the evolving nature of organised crime in the digital age. The use of social media to issue threats and taunt rivals adds a new dimension to these conflicts, potentially inciting violence with the click of a button. The impact on local communities cannot be overstated. Innocent bystanders have been killed, homes have been destroyed, and entire neighborhoods live under the shadow of potential violence. The psychological toll on residents in areas affected by these feuds is immense, creating a climate of fear and mistrust. For Irish law enforcement, the Walsh case presents a complex set of challenges. On one hand, there's the immediate need to protect Walsh from his would-be assassins, despite his criminal history. The issuance of a Garda information message, formed to Walsh, warning him of threats to his life, illustrates the strange position police find themselves in, having to protect a known criminal from other criminals. On the other hand, there's the ongoing effort to bring Walsh and his associates to justice for their numerous crimes. This dual mandate of protection and prosecution creates a delicate balancing act for the guards. The case also highlights the need for more sophisticated approaches to combating organized crime. Traditional methods of policing may not be sufficient to deal with criminals who are media savvy, technologically adept, and have international connections. As the hunt for James Nellie Walsh continues, questions abound about the future of organized crime in Ireland. Will this feud eventually burn itself out, or will it continue to claim lives and disrupt communities? Can law enforcement develop new strategies to effectively combat these entrenched criminal networks? The Walsh saga also raises broader societal questions. What factors drive young people into these criminal organizations? How can communities resist the allure of gang life and the quick money it promises? Are there policy changes or social interventions that could help break the cycle of violence? As Ireland grapples with these issues, the story of James Nellie Walsh stands as a stark reminder of the human cost of organized crime. It's a tale of violence, betrayal, and the corrupting influence of power and money. But it's also a story that holds up a mirror to society, challenging us to confront the conditions that allow such criminal empires to flourish. In the end, the James Nellie Walsh saga is more than just a true crime narrative. It's a complex tapestry of social, economic, and cultural factors that have shaped modern Ireland. As the country continues to evolve and face new challenges, the lessons learned from this ongoing conflict will undoubtedly play a role in shaping its approach to crime, justice, and community safety for years to come.
On a chilly November evening back in 2019, officers from Dublin's Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau set out on a mission that would reshape the city's criminal landscape. Acting on valuable intelligence, they conducted a raid on a residence located in Woodford Grove, Clan Del Golfo. Unbeknownst to them, this operation would become a pivotal moment in the ongoing battle against organized crime. Upon thoroughly searching the main house, the officers stumbled upon a small shed tucked away in the rear of the garden. With tension high and weapons at the ready, they noticed movement from within. Breaking the silence of the night, the command to stand down was given as the officers stormed into the shed. Inside, they encountered two individuals seated on a dilapidated couch. Among them was Trevor Byrne, a notorious figure infamous for his involvement in criminal activities, sending a shiver down the spine of law enforcement. Let's delve into it. With their firearms trained on the individuals, the officers demanded their surrender, yet Byrne remained unmoving, his gaze fixed upon them. Despite 2 additional warnings issued without response, the officers eventually holstered their weapons and forcibly removed the men from the couch, bringing them to the ground. This marked a significant triumph in Dublin's battle against organized crime, as they successfully apprehended one of the most dreaded gunmen associated with the Kinahan Cartel. Shortly before Christmas in 2020, Byrne received a 9-year sentence for firearm-related offenses. During the search of the shed, beneath the very couch where Byrne had been seated, officers uncovered a loaded 9mm pistol. A DNA analysis linked the firearm to Byrne, who later confessed before the Special Criminal Court. He claimed to have possessed the weapon for self-defense, citing a threat to his life that had compelled him to flee the country back in 2016. Just months following his 9-year conviction, Trevor Byrne, a man with a rap sheet boasting over 40 criminal convictions, once again found himself in the legal spotlight. This time, he stood trial for his involvement in a bungled armed robbery at Boyle's Sports, a local bookmaker situated in the heart of Applewood Village, Swords County, Dublin. Following the 2010 heist, Byrne proceeded to carjack a woman at gunpoint, issuing threats of violence. Convicted by a non-jury court, Byrne's guilt was established through the identification of a mobile phone left at the crime scene, along with recognition from CCTV footage. Consequently, he was handed a hefty sentence of 17.5 years, encompassing both firearm offenses and the armed robbery. However, this wasn't Byrne's inaugural encounter with the lengthy arm of the law. In 2005, another chapter of his criminal saga unfolded as he received an 8-year sentence for orchestrating a brazen robbery at an off-license establishment. During the heist, Byrne held 10 security guards at gunpoint before making a daring escape in a patrol car, subsequently absconding in a taxi after menacing the driver at gunpoint, all while being pursued by law enforcement. Astonishingly, a mere 4 months following his November 2009 release from prison, Byrne perpetrated the robbery in Swords. Trevor Byrne's tale is one woven with threads of violence, betrayal, and brazen criminal exploits, leaving an indelible imprint upon the city's landscape. Yet, his notoriety transcends mere trigger-pulling. He was the orchestrator of the thriving drug trade in Finglas on behalf of the Kinahan Cartel, a position that commanded both reverence and dread. His ascent was facilitated under the mentorship of Glenn David Ward, alias Mr. Flashy, who later assumed control over Finglas in 2017, thereby cementing Byrne's association with the notorious Gucci Gang, which wreaked havoc in the locality for years. Byrne's name became synonymous with controversy, particularly as a prime suspect in the 2014 shooting of John Gilligan, a prominent figure in the criminal underworld. Gilligan had accused Byrne of masterminding assassination attempts against him in both 2013 and 2014, stemming from a long-standing feud rooted in their shared time at Port Leash Prison. It's been rumored that Byrne's assault on Gilligan during their incarceration was instigated by Brian the Tosser Meehan, irate over a media interview given by Gilligan. Despite Gilligan's steadfast conviction of Byrne's involvement in the attacks, no charges were laid against Byrne in connection with these incidents. Authorities strongly suspect Trevor Byrne's deep entanglement in the violent Kinahan-Hutch feud, a harrowing saga that sent shockwaves through the city's foundation. His name emerged in connection with chilling episodes of gangland violence, notably the brutal slaying of Eddie Nettie Hutch, a brother of Jerry the Monk Hutch, mere days following the notorious Regency Hotel shooting in 2016. Nettie, returning home from his taxi driving duties around 7:45 p.m., fell victim to a ruthless ambush. As he exited his taxi, a group of 4 assailants emerged from a BMW, swiftly advancing towards him. In a hail of gunfire, Nettie was mercilessly gunned down, sustaining up to 9 fatal wounds before collapsing in the hallway of his own residence. Tragically, his wife, unsuspecting and present at the time, witnessed the horrifying ordeal unfold. Byrne found himself thrust into the spotlight following his arrest in May 2016, subjected to rigorous interrogation at Mountjoy Garda Station. He was among the initial 9 individuals apprehended in connection with the murder investigation. However, despite intense scrutiny, Byrne emerged from the ordeal unscathed, with no charges hanging over his head. Nevertheless, the whispers persisted, with rumors of his complicity reverberating throughout Dublin's labyrinthine alleys. Following his release, Byrne vanished from the country, purportedly seeking refuge in the UK. Yet just when Dublin believed him to be a distant memory, Byrne resurfaced on the city's streets, making a reappearance shortly before his subsequent arrest in 2019. Years later, in April 2023, while still serving his 17.5-year prison term at Mountjoy Prison, Trevor Byrne faced a second arrest in connection with the murder of Nettie Hutch, reigniting suspicions of his involvement as one of the gunmen. As the legal proceedings unfold, the case remains ongoing, casting a shadow over Byrne's fate. Yet, even behind bars, Byrne's influence seemed uncontainable. Within the confines of Mountjoy, he embraced his notorious persona, forging alliances with fellow inmates affiliated with the Kinahan Cartel. A series of photographs captured within the prison's high-security walls provide a glimpse into Byrne's life, seemingly untouched by incarceration. These images depict him celebrating his 40th birthday surrounded by fellow inmates, including Kevin Gibson, Graham Gardner, Glenn Thompson, and Robert Brown. Gibson, a close associate of senior cartel member Liam Byrne, found himself incarcerated for orchestrating a $280,000 cocaine smuggling operation, serving a 7-year sentence. Gardner, identified as the Kinahan quartermaster, received a 9-year sentence for his involvement in the possession of a significant cache of firearms. These weapons were believed to be earmarked for use in targeting a close associate of Jerry the Monk Hutch during a Garda operation targeting the Kinahan gang in 2016. Thompson and Brown, a former British Army soldier, received sentences of 17.5 years and 11.5 years respectively for their involvement in possessing firearms. Alongside Thompson's brother Gary, they were apprehended in a van located in an underground car park merely 250 meters from the residence of their intended target, Patrick "Patsy" Hutch. another brother of Jerry the Monk Hutch. Garda intelligence has long linked Trevor Byrne to associates of the Kinahan Cartel operating within Dublin. In years past, the seasoned criminal found himself compelled to seek protection from his cartel affiliates, amidst threats from notorious crime boss Eamon the Don Dunn. Byrne maintained a close association with the late John Daly, a notorious figure from Finglas known for his outspoken demeanor and volatile temper. Daly met his demise in 2007, allegedly due to concerns that he was encroaching on the territory of Eamon the Don Dunn in North Dublin. It's rumored that Dunn, along with hired hitman Paddy Doyle and incarcerated Fat Freddie Thompson, paid $10,000 to orchestrate Daly's assassination. Following Daly's murder, Dunn harbored apprehensions regarding potential reprisals upon Byrne's release from prison in December 2009. In an attempt to prove his allegiance to Dunn, Byrne was reportedly coerced into setting up another criminal figure, John Paul Joyce. However, Byrne balked at the directive and instead sought refuge with the Kinahan Cartel. With the assistance of his ally Gary Hutch, Byrne reached out to Daniel Kinahan, securing permission to relocate to the Costa del Sol for safety. Despite Byrne's refusal to comply with Dunn's demands, the crime boss proceeded to eliminate John Paul Joyce before meeting his own demise the following April. In early 2017, following the Regency Hotel shooting, Daniel Kinahan and Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, with ties to David Byrne, formed an alliance to eliminate James Mago Gately of the Hutch faction, resulting in a disastrous outcome for their trusted associates. This collaboration marked a pivotal moment for the Kinahan Cartel, particularly highlighted by the failed assassination attempt on Gately in 2017, as explored further in this video detailing the implications of these events. On April 3, 2017, an EasyJet flight departing from Alicante to Dublin carried Imre Arakas, disguised as a tourist but actually an Estonian hitman known as The Butcher, who was on a chilling mission to carry out a contract killing in Ireland. Let's delve into it. Discreetly monitoring a seemingly ordinary tourist en route to Dublin, agents from the Irish Guards were aboard the flight from Alicante, with additional units awaiting at Dublin Airport for his arrival. Following a meticulously executed operation, including armed guards storming the house the next morning, Estonian hitman Imre Arakas, alias The Butcher, associated with the infamous Irish Kinahan clan, was swiftly arrested and transported to the police station, effectively terminating his reign and marking a significant triumph for law enforcement against organized crime. Born in Estonia in 1958, Imre Arakas led a multifaceted life involving various talents and ambitions, from acting and wrestling to political activism. But it was his ominous alter ego as The Butcher that garnered infamy within his homeland amidst post-Soviet upheaval and involvement in violent gang conflicts, fueled by criminal acts and anti-Russian sentiment. Despite early dreams of pursuing a career in the arts, Imre Arakas's involvement in rebellious activities led to clashes with the law, temporarily halting his aspirations. Remarkably, amid scrutiny, his drama school teacher defended him as a passionate artist consumed by his ideals. Yet unbeknownst to many, Arakas's journey would transition him from aspiring theatrical fame to one of the world's most dreaded hitmen. In the 1980s, Arakas orchestrated a daring heist with a friend, targeting a shooting club to challenge the communist regime in Estonia, resulting in a significant seizure of firearms and capturing widespread attention as a direct defiance to authorities. Despite attempting to escape to Sweden, their plans were thwarted by the Coast Guard, leading to Arakas's imprisonment, from which he daringly escaped by jumping out of a window despite sustaining injuries. Despite a brief taste of freedom, Arakas was recaptured and endured 15 grueling years in a harsh Siberian prison, branded a terrorist by authorities, solidifying his reputation as a rebel against the communist regime. Following his release in 1992, Imre Arakas emerged from prison with a hardened demeanor, aligning himself with the Estonian Defense League, a hybrid organization advocating for independence while engaging in illicit activities, notably targeting Russians through drug trafficking and violence, earning him the notorious moniker The Butcher, and establishing his stature as a ruthless figure within the underground movement. Settling in Marbella, Spain in 1996, Arakas sought a quieter life, marrying and raising children while presenting himself as a retired criminal. Yet he remained a target for adversaries, narrowly escaping 2 separate attacks in Spain in 1998 and 2001, highlighting the persistent threat he posed to those who hadn't forgotten his past deeds. During this period, Arrakis collaborated with criminal factions like the Kinahan clan, leveraging his skills for financial gain and involvement in various illegal activities, including suspected homicides across Europe. Notably, he was implicated in the murder of Deimantas Bugavicius in November 2015, romantically linked to a Lithuanian pop star, indicating his deepening involvement in violence. As tensions escalated between the Kinahan and Hutch families, a crucial moment unfolded on February 16th at the Regency Hotel in Dublin, where an assassination attempt targeting Daniel Kinahan led to the fatal shooting of his associate David Byrne, signaling James Mago Gately as the next target in the escalating violent feud. In a bid to avoid repeating tragic incidents like the mistaken killing of Martin O'Rourke in 2016, the Kinahan faction opted to employ professional hitmen for their vendetta against the Hutch family, recruiting Imre Arrakis due to an alleged significant debt owed to them. Arrakis, enticed by the promise of a €100,000 payment for eliminating Gately, sought to alleviate his financial burden, but was thwarted when international law enforcement agencies alerted Irish guards, leading to swift surveillance operations and his subsequent arrest, marking another violent episode in the ongoing feud between the Kinahan and Hutch factions. Under surveillance from the airport to Stephen Fowler's residence, a Dublin local offering Arrakis shelter law enforcement acted swiftly, apprehending him the next morning. A subsequent raid on Fowler's home uncovered critical evidence, including Gately's address on Arrakis's BlackBerry and encrypted chats with individuals identified as Bon Daniel Kinahan and Knife Sean McGovern, detailing instructions and images for the planned assassination. Thanks to law enforcement's diligence, Gately's life was spared, and Arrakis was sentenced to 6 years in prison by the Special Criminal Court in 2018. Despite being a married father of two, Arrakis's involvement in the foiled assassination plot underscored the brutality of the criminal underworld he inhabited. The integration of new technology proved crucial in unraveling the Kinahan Cartel's communication network, with evidence revealing Imre Arrakis's direct coordination with a figure identified as Bon, likely Daniel Kinahan, as they planned Gately's assassination using details provided by Kinahan associate Douglas Glynn. Arrakis's scheme involved ambushing Gately upon his return home, exploiting information on Gately's residence and driving routines, as well as a tracking device placed under Gately's Toyota by Glynn. Following Arrakis's conviction and subsequent extradition to Lithuania for his involvement in Bugavicius's murder, the failed assassination attempt on Gately exposed the cartel's operations, leading to the arrest of key member Douglas Glynn, whose direct ties to Daniel Kinahan were revealed through advanced decryption technology. Despite his relatively low profile within the Kinahan cartel, Glynn played a pivotal role by clandestinely managing the secret storehouse located in the North Inner City, a territory traditionally associated with the Hutch family, which solidified his allegiance to Daniel Kinahan and earned him a trusted position within Kinahan's inner circle. Encrypted communications revealed the depth of Kinahan's involvement in directing Glynn's activities at the secret depot, exposing direct communication between them during conflicts with the Hutch family, and highlighting Kinahan's role in issuing instructions to Glynn, ultimately leading to the depot's raid in March 2017. The discovery of Glynn's BlackBerry device during the investigation into the failed assassination attempt on James Mago Gately provided crucial insights into the operations of the secret depot, with breakthrough decryption technology in February 2021, exposing Kinahan's directives to Glynn regarding drug distribution under the codename Bon, underscoring Kinahan's direct involvement in the cartel's illicit activities. As the director of the depot, Glynn held a central role in orchestrating its operations, issuing instructions to others involved, which were corroborated by descriptions found on seized phones, resulting in his 8-year prison sentence after pleading guilty to conspiracy charges related to drug and ammunition possession. Glynn's involvement extended to his brother Anthony and associate Emmett Fogarty, with intercepted messages highlighting detailed planning, leading to Glynn's second sentence from the same court, previously receiving a 6.5-year jail term for his role in the failed assassination plot targeting James Mago Gately, underscoring the seriousness of the criminal organization he aided. Glynn's actions unfolded amid the ongoing feud between the Kinahan and Hutch factions, with Gately being a prime target due to his perceived responsibility for the Regency Hotel shooting in February 2016, highlighting the significant risks inherent in Glynn's criminal activities within the formidable Kinahan cartel. Security personnel alerted Gately to the imminent threat posed by the Kinahans, with Glynn confessing to planting a tracking device on Gately's Toyota, captured on surveillance footage. As logistics coordinator for the Kinahans in April 2017, Glynn oversaw weapons procurement and encrypted phone distribution, revealing the cartel's lack of anticipation regarding exposure through decrypted communications found during law enforcement's search of a Dublin address. Glynn's criminal record, mainly minor offenses, included a drug-related conviction, while ongoing efforts target Daniel Kinahan, residing in Dubai, emphasizing the persistent pursuit of justice against the Kinahan Cartel aided by technological advancements. In the latest update on Daniel Kinahan, guards in Ireland have sent files to the DDP for him to be charged with the murder of Eddie Hutch, who is the brother of Jerry, the monk Hutch. As this case unfolds, we will keep you updated as it progresses. In a September 2023 incident resembling a blockbuster action movie, Ireland became the focal point of a major drug seizure off the coast of Cork. Bungling mobsters triggered a commando raid on the 19-meter-long MV Matthew after running aground a landing boat, leading to the discovery of 2.25 tons of cocaine valued at approximately 500 million euros. Investigators linked the operation to a collaboration between the Colombian cartel, the Clan Del Golfo, an Albanian-led consortium, and the Irish Kinahan Cartel, with up to 20 European criminal gangs suspected of involvement. As Ireland faces the aftermath, a looming cartel conflict arises from the undeniable connection to the Clan Del Golfo, one of South America's most violent cartels. Let's delve into it. The drug trade in Europe has evolved into a major hub for South American cartels, notably the Clan Del Golfo, now a leading global cocaine distributor. Their extensive operations have granted them independence from Mexican cartels, usually dominant in the U.S. market. Direct transactions between South American and European factions have become common, circumventing traditional intermediaries. While the 2.25-ton cocaine seizure made headlines in Ireland, it's just a fraction of the Clan Del Golfo's monthly exports, totaling a staggering 20 tons, equivalent to 45,000 kilos of cocaine every month. This formidable cartel, comprising around 6,000 heavily armed members, originates from a military background and operates in remote and challenging areas of Colombia. They exert control over towns, making their operations elusive and complex. During the 1980s, Colombia experienced a significant surge in its cocaine trade, leading to substantial financial gains for participants. Against the backdrop of a devastating civil war, the nation endured a turbulent period marked by the seizure of territory by FARC, a leftist group, sparking widespread conflict and resulting in numerous casualties. In reaction, right-wing guerrilla movements emerged, intensifying opposition. Against this turbulent backdrop, the Clan Del Golfo's origins became entwined, further complicating an already chaotic Colombian landscape. Essentially operating as a paramilitary force, the Clan Del Golfo's emergence occurred amidst the dominance of two other formidable cartels, the Medellin Cartel and the Cali Cartel. However, following the dismantling of these powerful organizations by law enforcement, Colombia plunged into a period of upheaval. This upheaval created the fertile ground for the rise of the Clan Del Golfo, paving the way for their ascent to prominence. In contrast to Pablo Escobar's cartel, the Clan Del Golfo operates with a different approach. Rather than micromanaging every aspect of cocaine production, they delegate initial stages to individuals in the jungles. Once the raw product is acquired, the Clan Del Golfo assumes control, managing the process from that juncture onward. Dairo Antonio Usuga David, also known as Otoniel, led the Clan Del Golfo until his arrest in 2021. With 132 arrest warrants against him, he was extradited to the United States in May 2022. In New York, he pleaded guilty to charges related to his leadership of the Clan Del Golfo, resulting in a current 45-year prison sentence. Antonio, who initially rose as a paramilitary figure, favored a secluded life in the jungle, contrasting with Pablo Escobar's flamboyant lifestyle. Despite his wealth, Otoniel avoided ostentation, maintaining a low profile away from the public eye. He epitomizes a dark and sinister figure, employing witchcraft to evade authorities. His organization's involvement in abhorrent crimes like child sex abuse and rape underscore his depravity. Operating primarily in remote regions, he navigates through a network of rural safe houses, allegedly changing his sleeping quarters nightly to evade detection. Eschewing modern communication tools, he shuns phones and relies on couriers for messages. Otoniel stands accused of orchestrating numerous cocaine shipments to the United States and Europe, as well as engaging in the murder of police officers and the recruitment of minors, among other offenses. Under his leadership, the Clan Del Golfo perpetrated a spree of assassinations targeting political and law enforcement figures, as well as internal group members. Despite his efforts to remain concealed, Colombian intelligence forces managed to pinpoint his rural hideout through the meticulous tracking of cartel members tasked with delivering specific medications to treat his kidney ailment. On a crisp October morning in 2021, a military team, codenamed El Blanco, orchestrated a massive operation to apprehend Otoniel. Backed by hundreds of police officers, more than 20 helicopters, and 10 unmanned surveillance drones, they surrounded his suspected hideout. The capture mission involved strategic measures such as blocking rivers and roads that could serve as potential escape routes. Additionally, Colombian Navy ships were positioned offshore to thwart any attempted sea escape. Under Otoniel's command, the Clan Del Golfo operated as a tightly knit cell-structured network, with distinct units managing different facets of their illicit activities. These units were discreetly dispersed and concealed within the jungle, rendering infiltration by law enforcement nearly insurmountable. To safeguard their organization further, they delegated tasks to independent cells, intricately weaving a complex web of operations. Furthermore, the Clan Del Golfo collaborated with local street gangs, utilizing them for cocaine distribution, extortion, and targeted assassinations, a strategy reminiscent of the tactics employed by the Kinahan Cartel. Colombian cartels, particularly the Clan Del Golfo, held a strong interest in expanding their reach into Europe.
Alan Ryan's story begins in the turbulent environment of North Dublin, where he emerged as a prominent figure in the real IRA. From a young age, Ryan demonstrated a fierce commitment to the Republican cause, joining the youth wing of the IRA before he even reached adulthood. His involvement in the armed Republican movement was a natural progression for someone so deeply immersed in the political and ideological currents of his community. As a teenager, Ryan's commitment to the cause was evident. Despite the ongoing peace process and the changing dynamics of the IRA, Ryan remained staunchly loyal to the principles of armed struggle. His early encounters with the law, including his arrest at an IRA training camp, only solidified his reputation within the dissident Republican movement. His time in Portlaoise prison, among the political prisoners, further entrenched his resolve and his stature within the movement. Upon his release, Ryan's leadership within the real IRA Dublin Brigade became more pronounced. He sought to assert the group's relevance in a city where criminal enterprises and drug gangs were beginning to overshadow traditional political struggles. His efforts to revive the real IRA influence led to an increase in violent confrontations with rival gangs, marking the beginning of a new era of conflict in Dublin's underworld. The early 2010s were marked by escalating tensions in Dublin's criminal underworld. As the real IRA, under Alan Ryan's leadership, sought to reassert its influence, it found itself in conflict with established criminal organizations, notably the Kinahan Cartel. This period saw a series of violent incidents that underscored the intensifying struggle for control over Dublin's lucrative drug trade. The Kinahan Cartel, already entrenched in the city's criminal landscape, viewed the real IRA as a significant threat to their dominance. The rivalry between the two groups was marked by a series of violent clashes, with each side seeking to outmaneuver the other. The real IRA attempt to reassert itself through violent means only served to further exacerbate the tensions, leading to a cycle of retaliation and escalating violence. During this time, the real IRA actions included a mix of political posturing and criminal activities. Their efforts to position themselves as defenders of traditional Republican values were increasingly overshadowed by their involvement in extortion, drug trafficking, and violent enforcement against rivals. The contrast between their purported political motives and their criminal activities became increasingly stark, contributing to the growing instability in Dublin. Alan Ryan's death on September 3, 2012, was a turning point in the ongoing conflict. The murder, which occurred in the midst of a chaotic period for the real IRA, shocked the city and marked a significant escalation in the violence. Ryan was shot dead in broad daylight, a brazen act that highlighted the shifting dynamics within Dublin's criminal underworld. The aftermath of Ryan's murder was characterized by a period of intense turmoil and retribution. His death left a power vacuum within the real IRA, leading to a period of internal strife and external pressures. The group struggled to maintain cohesion and leadership in the wake of Ryan's assassination, with various factions vying for control. Ryan's death also had a profound impact on the city's criminal landscape. The power vacuum created by his assassination led to increased violence and instability, as rival gangs and criminal organizations sought to capitalize on the disruption. The real IRA, once a formidable force, found itself grappling with the consequences of Ryan's death and the subsequent rise of other criminal players. In the wake of Alan Ryan's murder, Dublin experienced a surge in violence as various factions within the criminal underworld sought to assert their dominance. The real IRA, struggling to recover from the loss of their leader, faced increasing challenges from rival gangs and criminal organizations. The vacuum left by Ryan's death created an environment ripe for further conflict and power struggles. The Kinahan Cartel, in particular, capitalized on the chaos. Their strategic maneuvers during this period involved consolidating their position in the drug trade and expanding their influence. The cartel's ability to adapt to the shifting dynamics allowed them to strengthen their grip on Dublin's criminal landscape. Their actions during this time included forging new alliances, expanding their operations, and eliminating potential threats. Meanwhile, the real IRA internal struggles were exacerbated by the murder of Peter Butterley, a figure whose death further destabilized the organization. Butterley's murder was a significant blow to the real IRA and highlighted the group's vulnerability. The combination of internal turmoil and external pressures led to a period of disarray and decline for the real IRA Dublin Brigade. The murder of Vinnie Ryan on February 29, 2016, was a brutal chapter in Dublin's ongoing saga of gangland violence. Ryan, a prominent figure within the real IRA, was shot dead outside his home in Finglas. The attack, carried out in broad daylight, was a calculated move that underscored the volatility and danger of Dublin's criminal underworld. The murder was a significant event that highlighted the ongoing feud between the real IRA and other criminal factions. The shooting, which resulted in Ryan being struck by multiple bullets, was a stark reminder of the intensity of the conflict. The circumstances of the murder, Ryan's presence with his young daughter at the time, added a tragic dimension to the event. Speculation surrounding the perpetrators of Ryan's murder included suggestions of involvement by the Kinahan Cartel. While some believed that the cartel was directly responsible, others thought it was the work of independent operators or freelance hit teams. The ambiguity surrounding the motives and perpetrators added to the complexity of the situation and kept both law enforcement and the public guessing. As Dublin's underworld reeled from the violent clashes between the real IRA and rival gangs, the Kinahan Cartel emerged as a central player in the evolving power struggle. With Alan Ryan's death leaving a power vacuum, the Kinahans, already well established in the city's drug trade, saw an opportunity to consolidate their influence and assert dominance over their rivals. The Kinahan Cartel's strategy was multifaceted. Recognizing the disruption caused by the feud, they intensified their criminal operations while maintaining a relatively low profile. Their approach was both strategic and opportunistic, capitalizing on the chaos to strengthen their position in the drug market. This included expanding their network, forging new alliances, and eliminating potential threats. The cartel's ability to adapt quickly to the shifting dynamics of gangland violence was a testament to their operational sophistication and ruthless efficiency. During this period, Dublin witnessed an increase in violence as various factions, including the Kinahan Cartel, engaged in turf wars and retaliatory attacks. The Kinahans, known for their strategic acumen, carefully orchestrated their moves to avoid direct confrontations that could draw unwanted attention from law enforcement. Instead, they preferred to use intermediaries and subcontract criminals to carry out violent acts. thereby distancing themselves from the direct fallout of their actions. Despite the chaos, the Kinahan Cartel's influence continued to grow. Their ability to leverage the instability created by the feud allowed them to further entrench themselves in Dublin's criminal landscape. They capitalized on the disruption to expand their operations and strengthen their grip on the city's drug trade, making them a dominant force in the ongoing struggle for power. The downfall of the real IRA Dublin Brigade was both dramatic and decisive. The violence and instability following Alan Ryan's death led to a significant decline in the brigade's operational capacity. The organization's inability to maintain cohesion and discipline during the aftermath of Ryan's assassination was a critical factor in its downfall. Following Ryan's murder, the real IRA faced internal turmoil and external pressure. The group's leadership was in disarray, and its ranks were increasingly filled with individuals either arrested or disillusioned by the escalating violence and lack of progress. The disorganization was exacerbated by the murder of Peter Butterley, a figure whose death further destabilized the already fragile structure of the Dublin Brigade. The Guards took advantage of this instability. They launched a series of high-profile operations aimed at dismantling the real IRA remaining networks. These operations, fueled by intelligence gathered from ongoing investigations and the public's increased willingness to cooperate with law enforcement, resulted in numerous arrests and convictions. The trials that followed brought to light the extent of the real IRA involvement in criminal activities beyond their purported political aims. The convictions of individuals involved in the murder of Vinnie Ryan and other criminal acts underscored the group's transformation from a politically motivated organization into a criminal enterprise. The trials revealed the real IRA deep involvement in organized crime, including extortion, drug trafficking, and violent enforcement against rivals. The conviction of key figures in the organization marked a turning point. The Dublin Brigade, once a formidable force in the city's criminal and political landscape, was effectively dismantled. The group's ability to operate and exert influence was significantly diminished, leading to the collapse of its organized structure and a reduction in its activities. The fall of the Dublin Brigade had far-reaching implications. It not only weakened the real IRA presence in Dublin, but also shifted the balance of power in the city's criminal underworld. With the brigade's decline, other criminal organizations, including the Kinahan Cartel, seized the opportunity to expand their influence and fill the void left by the real IRA disintegration. As the real IRA's Dublin Brigade faded into the background, the focus shifted to the new dynamics emerging in Dublin's criminal landscape. The power struggles and shifting alliances that followed the brigade's fall continued to shape the city's underworld, setting the stage for the next chapter in Dublin's ongoing saga of crime and violence. As the 20th century drew to a close, the Irish city of Limerick found itself embroiled in a web of criminal activity that would soon erupt into one of the most notorious gang conflicts in the country's history. The Limerick Feud, as it came to be known, is a harrowing tale of family rivalries, power struggles, and the ruthless battle for control over the lucrative drug trade in the region. Limerick had already earned a grim reputation, colloquially known as Stab City, due to its high crime rates and prevalence of knife-related incidents. However, the events that would unfold in the coming years would eclipse even this ominous moniker, plunging the city into a spiral of violence that would claim numerous lives and leave an indelible mark on its history. On a seemingly ordinary Friday afternoon in November 2000, an event occurred that would set in motion a chain of violent reprisals lasting for over a decade. Christy Keane, a prominent figure in Limerick's criminal underworld, sat in his car outside a primary school, waiting to collect his son. Unbeknownst to him, a gunman, believed to be his former associate Eddie Ryan, approached with deadly intent. In a twist of fate that would alter the course of Limerick's criminal landscape, the would-be assassin's gun jammed at the crucial moment. Recognizing his assailant as a man he once considered a trusted ally, Keane watched as Ryan fled the scene, leaving behind a failed attempt and sowing the seeds of a vicious conflict that would engulf the city. This botched assassination attempt marked the beginning of the infamous Limerick Feud, a conflict that would claim the lives of 20 individuals and leave countless others affected by its brutal fallout. The feud was not merely a struggle for control over the drug trade, it was a complex tapestry of personal vendettas, family loyalties, and the ruthless pursuit of power. To understand the feud's origins, one must delve into Limerick's criminal history. For years, the Keane and Colopy families had dominated the local underworld, establishing themselves as key players in the distribution of cocaine and heroin beyond the confines of Dublin. Their reign, however, was about to be challenged by new blood in the form of the Dundin family. Christy Keane, the head of the Keane gang, had built a formidable criminal empire. His organization was known for its efficiency and brutality, with Eddie Ryan serving as its primary enforcer. The two men had a long-standing friendship and alliance, their fortunes intertwined in the murky world of organized crime. However, the bonds of loyalty in this world are often tenuous, and a series of events would soon test the relationship between Keane and Ryan. Personal disputes and family conflicts began to erode the trust between the two men. Ryan, ambitious and seeking to emerge from Keane's shadow, began to entertain thoughts of establishing his own operation. A seemingly minor altercation between the daughters of Keane and Ryan at a local schoolyard proved to be the catalyst for their deteriorating relationship. The incident, which resulted in one girl receiving a facial injury, inflamed tensions between the two families. What might have been dismissed as a childish squabble in other circumstances became a point of bitter contention in the volatile world of Limerick's criminal gangs. The response to Ryan's attempted assassination of Keane was swift and merciless. Within days, Eddie Ryan met a violent end while attending a funeral at St. John's Cathedral. In a brazen attack that shocked even the hardened criminals of Limerick, two gunmen entered the crowded Moose Bar where Ryan was having a drink with his son, Kieran. In a hail of automatic gunfire, Eddie Ryan's life was cut short. His son Kieran narrowly escaped the same fate, having stepped away to the restroom moments before the attack. The identity of the gunman was never officially confirmed, but strong suspicions pointed to Christy Keane's brother Kieran and Philip Colopy, an enforcer for the Colopy gang. This retaliatory strike marked the true beginning of the Limerick Feud, setting off a chain reaction of violence that would engulf the city for years to come. The murder of Eddie Ryan drew clear battle lines between the warring factions and set the stage for an escalation of hostilities. As the feud developed, the criminal landscape of Limerick underwent a dramatic transformation. The Keane gang, recognizing the need for increased firepower and support, forged an alliance with the Colopy family. This union created a formidable force in the local drug trade, combining the resources and manpower of two of the city's most established criminal organizations. On the other side of the conflict, the Ryan family, now seeking vengeance for Eddie's murder, found unlikely allies in the form of the McCarthy-Dundin faction. The Dundin brothers, originally hailing from England, had returned to Ireland and quickly established themselves as major players in Limerick's criminal scene. Operating out of the Ballinacurra Western area on the city's south side, they had rapidly expanded their drug network and were hungry for more power. The McCarthy-Dundin alliance, while initially portraying neutrality to the Keane Colopy gang, had secretly agreed to join forces with the Ryan family. Their ultimate goal was to seize control of Limerick's lucrative drug trade and exact revenge for Eddie Ryan's murder. On January 23, 2003, a series of events unfolded that would shock even the most hardened criminals in Limerick. Reports circulated that Eddie Ryan's young sons, Eddie Jr. and Kieran Rashers, had been kidnapped by armed, masked men on Molyneux Road in Ballinanty. This apparent abduction set in motion a chain of events that would lead to a brutal betrayal. A week after the alleged kidnapping, Kieran Keane Sr. and his nephew, Owen Tracy, arranged to meet Desi Dundin at a house near the Fairgreen. The Keanes had brought in the Dundins, ostensibly to eliminate the young Ryan brothers, fearing potential retaliation for their father's death. Keane had reportedly promised a substantial sum of €60,000 for the double murder. Believing they were working with allies, Keane and Tracy arrived at the house expecting to witness the execution of the Ryan brothers or view their bodies. Instead, they walked into a carefully orchestrated trap. Upon entering, they were confronted by several armed men. In a shocking turn of events, Keane and Tracy found themselves bound, beaten and hooded. The captors, having failed in their attempt to lure two Colopy brothers to the same location, decided to proceed with their grim plan. Keane and Tracy were transported to a remote country road on the outskirts of Limerick. There, in a cold-blooded execution, Kieran Keane was stabbed and shot once in the back of the head. Owen Tracy suffered a horrific ordeal, enduring 17 stab wounds to his face, head, and chest. Believing both men to be dead, the attackers fled the scene. In a miraculous turn of events, Tracy survived the brutal assault and managed to seek help. The true nature of the double cross became apparent 6 hours later when the two Ryan brothers walked into Portlaoise Garda station, unharmed, and revealing that they had never been kidnapped at all. The entire kidnapping scenario had been an elaborate ruse, designed to lure the Keane Colopy gang into a vulnerable position. The McCarthy-Dundin alliance, in collaboration with the Ryans, had orchestrated this brutal betrayal with the aim of eliminating their rivals and assuming control of the Midwest region's drug trade. The murder of Kieran Keane Sr. marked a significant escalation in the Limerick Feud. It was seen as the first major killing of the conflict, a direct retaliation for Eddie Ryan's attempted assassination of Christy Keane. The brutality of the attack and the cunning nature of the double cross sent shockwaves through Limerick's criminal underworld and beyond. In the months that followed, the violence continued to spiral. John Ryan, Eddie Ryan's older brother, became the next target in this bloody vendetta. While working on a friend's patio in Tomangate, John was gunned down by a young assailant, reportedly no older than 15, who approached on a motorbike. Ryan succumbed to his injuries less than an hour later at the Midwestern Regional Hospital. The cycle of violence continued unabated. In October 2003, Michael Campbell McNamara, a 23-year-old member of the Keane Colopy gang, fell victim to a particularly gruesome murder. His mutilated body was discovered on waste ground near South Hill in Limerick, bearing signs of a brutal execution. McNamara had been bound, stabbed multiple times and shot twice, a clear message to his associates and rivals alike. As the feud raged on, its impact began to extend beyond the confines of Limerick's criminal gangs. Innocent bystanders found themselves caught in the crossfire, both literally and figuratively. The most notorious case of collateral damage occurred in 2008, when Shane Gagan, an innocent rugby player, was mistakenly targeted by the McCarthy-Dundin faction. Gagan's murder, a case of mistaken identity, sparked public outrage within Limerick and across Ireland. The intended target had been Johnny McNamara, a convicted drug dealer with ties to the Keane Colopy gang, who lived in the same neighborhood as Gagan. McNamara had already survived 3 previous attempts on his life, a testament to the relentless nature of the feud. The killing of Shane Gagan marked a turning point in public perception of the Limerick Feud. The death of an innocent man brought home the reality of the violence that had been plaguing the city, galvanizing public opinion against the warring factions and putting increased pressure on law enforcement to bring an end to the conflict. Throughout the duration of the Limerick Feud, the Guards faced an uphill battle in their efforts to curb the violence and bring the perpetrators to justice. The close-knit nature of the criminal gangs, the code of silence among their members, and the fear of reprisals among potential witnesses all contributed to the challenges faced by law enforcement. Despite these obstacles, the Guards made significant strides in their fight against organised crime in Limerick. Through a combination of increased surveillance, strategic operations, and community engagement, they gradually began to turn the tide against the warring factions. The establishment of specialized units dedicated to tackling organized crime, along with enhanced cooperation between different branches of law enforcement, proved crucial in dismantling the criminal networks that had held Limerick in their grip for so long. As the second decade of the 21st century dawned, the intensity of the Limerick Feud began to wane. The combined efforts of law enforcement, community initiatives, and the attrition of key players in the conflict contributed to a significant reduction in violence. However, the scars left by the feud run deep. Over the course of a decade, the conflict claimed 20 lives and was responsible for hundreds of shootings, stabbings, and pipe bomb attacks. The human cost extended far beyond the direct casualties, affecting families, communities, and the very fabric of Limerick society. Despite the relative calm that has descended on the city in recent years, remnants of the feud occasionally resurface. In 2015, Christy Keane, the man whose attempted assassination had sparked the conflict 15 years earlier, once again found himself in the crosshairs. While heading to the gym on the University of Limerick campus, Keane was shot multiple times by two gunmen. In a demonstration of the resilience that had characterized his criminal career, Keane survived the attack. Today, Limerick presents a different face to the world. The city has made significant strides in shaking off its violent reputation, focusing instead on economic development, cultural initiatives, and community renewal. However, the legacy of the Limerick Feud serves as a cautionary tale about the destructive power of organized crime and the long-lasting impact of gang violence on urban communities. That is our video for today. If you want to see our next videos, like and subscribe, as it really does help the channel to grow. Thank you